And we're going live any moment now. And we're good.
Hi, everybody. Are you a man? Welcome to the Gaytriarchy. I think I already botched this intro. Are you a gay man? Are you a bisexual man? Are you not? Somebody has a window. Who has the window open? I'm guessing is it me?
Hmm.
Wait, but I don't think I do. Oh, it is me. God damn it! How did that happen?
Gremlins.
Yeah, no, that's weird. Okay, so it- um, I don't remember like where in the stupid intro speech I was going to say, but so I was going to say something probably at some point about how our guest, the sort of the featured guest that we actually had scheduled, who hopefully is going to be able to still show up, is somebody who I was told about them as somebody who has detransitioned. So they are male, identify as male, but at some point identified as a male to female transgender person and has detransitioned. However, the person who invited them onto the show, Spacepan, is the only person who has contact with this person. I could send them a Facebook message theoretically, but I am currently not able to use my Facebook account. Thanks, Zuck. So I don't know how we're going to get in contact with this person actually, which is rather unfortunate.
Gonna use what telepathy?
Yeah, maybe they'll be in the chat, and if they are in the chat, please tweet at me, or maybe I don't know what else. We'll figure some other thing out. Say what your name is in the chat, and then we will send you the invite to your email, and we'll have you on as soon as possible. Otherwise, if you haven't hit that like button and you're watching, please do, because there's 17 people watching right now, which means 11 people have not hit it, which means that it would be cool if you did, because maybe there will be more people watching. That being said, I want to welcome back my friend that is one of the only people that has appeared twice on this as a guest, Jordan, who lives in San Francisco, who I this is kind of coincidental, but uh I was thinking it would be cool if he were to talk to this person that is the ex-trans person about being, maybe like reclaiming one's manhood or something. That sounds so cheesy, but Jordan actually posted on Facebook just today, being that Jordan actually has experience as a counselor or a therapist, and that was what his master's is in, or at least a related field. And Jordan was saying that he was interested in helping men talk about their problems. And I don't really know the extent of what Jordan means by that, because it was a very brief, it was like a one sentence post, but I'm curious to know about that from Jordan. So what's going on with that?
Well, I love that that's what caused you to reach out because I I made two significant posts today. Um, Before the one that you just referenced um, earlier, I posted that I'm publicly dropping the title of healer from anywhere in my life. And for me, that for the last few years, I've been on a healing journey, and I had studied and experienced various kinds of healing for my own personal benefit, and was learning to practice and share um, what I was learning. And I realized and took a step today that the idea of being a healer has become, I think, a double-edged sword, and for some use it almost as a weapon to try and put a person in a box of how they should behave or how they should present themselves. And so by dropping that today and effectively editing my titles in my personal websites and profiles and such, I'm taking the stance as being a person who offers support, a person who can offer counseling and therapeutic listening, a person who is empathic and also experienced, and all of those things still apply to me without having to assign myself some kind of label.
How about you call yourself a shaman?
Well, and
I'm just joking. No, I'm joking. I'm joking.
A lot of people call themselves a lot of things, and it's much easier just to say, actually, I'm here to be supportive.
I wonder though, I very much appreciate where you're coming from, because what the thought that immediately comes to my mind is these people who call themselves activists. And it's so funny because, if we're going to talk about activism, like every feminist that and every person that has like a Black Lives Matter default photo on their Facebook anywhere that is going to call themselves an activist. But what do they actually do? What is their activism? It's all the status quo. It's all just, virtue signaling whatever everybody else already agrees with in their own echo chamber. So in comparison to those people, when I talk about men's issues personally, I'm obviously an activist. But I refuse to even call myself an activist just because I like to make that linguistic differentiation for my own personal reasons in a similar way to what you just described. Like, I don't partake in activism so much as I do advocacy. And that's what my YouTube channel is about. And that's why I will call myself a men's rights advocate, but I won't call myself a men's rights activist. Now, if I was organizing campaigns to raise money for legal support for the falsely accused, then I'd call myself an activist. Sure. But I don't. However, I do think that being that you actually have skills in, I don't remember exactly what your master's degree is. I wonder if there's
psychotherapy.
It again.
Somatic psychotherapy.
Okay. And you also, that was your sort of like your concentration, but I know that you studied a lot of different forms of therapy.
Yes.
So you have qualifications where you get to, you at least have earned the right to have some sort of a formal classification for like what you are, and maybe you deserve that, because not just for yourself but for potential people that might be seeking your services for some reason.
Yeah, it's been an interesting conversation in my life with myself, a conversation I have with myself about this, because by purposefully eschewing a license, I'm saying that I don't want to be told what I can and cannot practice, and because there's a lot of politics in in California. It's the Board of Behavioral Sciences, and that's the system is like, if I want to call myself a psychotherapist, I have to have a license. Same thing if you want to call yourself a massage therapist. But if you want to offer forms of therapy, like sound therapy is something that I really enjoy, that I don't have to have a license for. So it's all about how the languaging you're using and how you're using it.
Wow. Being that I'm one of these obnoxious people with a creative writing degree, I could sit around for probably like way too long trying to come up with what I think you should call yourself. So let's just not do that.
Right.
Because that would get tedious. We can have that conversation off air. So, other people, other guys, Bacon, Farrell, how you doing?
Doing pretty good. How about you?
Well, I already mentioned that. I'm actually like, maybe I said this off air. I might have an aching back, and I didn't really sleep all that well last night. But whatever. I mean, yeah. Bacon, how are you doing?
I am okay. I had a crap load of job interviews today, and I ate a pint of not ice cream.
Oh,
Sweet on both counts. Hoping
Yes.
something pans out.
Yes.
so I'm happy that you seem to be excited to talk about hashtag pound me too, or I guess just pound. Yeah, just pound me too. That's kind of a little bit. It's a little bit repetitive and redundant and repetitive. To say hashtag pound me too. So pound me too. You seem to actually want to talk about various things having to do with that. So maybe we could go into the territory of beginning to bring these subjects up, hoping that our other guest maybe will potentially grace us with his presence. And while we're coming up with these topics of discussion. And because so I can lead in a little bit into the discussions. I have been trying to keep up on the Kavanagh hearings, but I have this thing with breaking news where I don't actually like covering it on my channel. And it's not just because it's not really what I do. Like if people are going to go try to find breaking news, they would watch somebody like Tim Pool, or I guess, who's the new person is the Quartering or the Courtening or whatever his name is, has a massive amount of subscribers all of a sudden, like well over 150,000. And sometimes it's all right. He is on the beat. Like he catches decent stories and he does it quickly. I'm not going to speak about his level of entertainingness as a person because he's a little, but I don't have a problem with him, whatever. But that's not why you really watch him. You watch him because you're walking somewhere or you're at the gym and you want to hear about what's going on in whatever you're interested in. And he's interested in a lot of things. But also, I don't like when it's a situation where there's all of these details that are just coming out, and every day there's something new, every day there's something new, every day there's something new. But ultimately, it's just one story, like which is that this guy is going to be on the Supreme Court ultimately, probably. Like it's not like they're going to keep him off. It's looking more and more obvious that it's all just histrionics, like just the Democrats being completely insane and like hiring paid agitators to get arrested at the hearing, some of which look like meth addicts. I have footage of ones in particular that is just like, these women cannot be actual true believers. Like they must be like trying to get meth money to be doing this. And,
no doubt. I mean, they're all on meth.
Yeah, and so
That's messed up.
So at the end of the day, it's just prolonging the inevitable. So I have been finally starting to catch up on the highlights, but it's been very interesting looking at my personal Facebook timeline. And I'm sure Jordan can agree, being that we know I'm sure we know well over 50, probably over 100 people in common in San Francisco. And we know some of the stupidest people that are just, so
it's
people
appalling. It's appalling. I feel like I'm in the center of zombie land.
And they're posting things like the entire status update will be things like, I believe her. And that's it.
God. Or just believe women.
Yeah, and then what's funny is it's some like gay guy, or like some gay guy talking about.
It was a gay guy who literally posted "believe women," and then I commented on it and I said, "Distrust men?" ?
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
distrust men, because
that's
what Pound Me Too is about.
Well, and it's like, what horrible bad thing did you do to a woman that you're like worried that they're gonna come for you or something? Is that what this is? Because like I know I didn't do nothing, you
Oh my
know.
God. And like I actually took a second to watch the one of the testimony of the woman, and it was like so awkward it made me uncomfortable.
Oh, she's so obviously lying, and I can I don't want to say okay. Well, I don't have to prove it because everybody else already did.
Yeah, it's already
but
been proven. It's just oh my God.
but the thing is that she's exhibiting signs of what interrogators use to investigate whether or not somebody's lying. And like you guys, my video will come out tomorrow. I have footage of the like expert interrogator lady that did the TED talk, and right next to like this woman, and it's just so crystal clear that she's lying. And the thing about it is that it's so funny seeing these male feminists and far leftists, and one of the guys, white gay guys, saying things like, "This is what white male privilege looks like," and it's so heinous to see these things like that because it's literally the exact
Okay, there was a
opposite.
woman on a white middle-aged woman on my feed who said if he gets confirmed, she's gonna go all Philly. She lives in Berkeley, and she says she's gonna go all Philly and flip police cars. And I commented on her thing and said, "Well, as a white woman in Berkeley, you would probably be allowed to do that with impunity."
Yeah.
It is Berkeley.
Well, it's just it makes me sick because like I mean this is literally written into Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which is whatever you're up to, accuse your opponent of doing. And the thing is that this is a situation where it is so ridiculously 120% clear that the female privilege, the attitude of female entitlements and female privilege and female over trust in women in not just media but now in high stakes politics, that they can just get away with the most ludicrously awful behavior and people act like it's semi-normal for some reason, and then they turn around and call the guy a privileged entitled white male for defending himself. And it's the most disgusting thing. And I like to believe, there is this the colloquialism is when people have their beliefs when people have their beliefs challenged, when in doubt, shout. And I want to believe that some of these gay guys who are posting these one line status update or 2 words that say believe women or I believe her or this is what white male privilege looks like. I want to believe that they're finally starting to think, because if it used to, I know, maybe a year, two, especially 3 years ago, you would see more like paragraph long testimonies from this type of guy where they'd be like trying to sort of justify why women kind of get to be like that and not justify themselves and, just make these allegations. But at this point, they're not even pretending to like argue in her favor. They're just saying, I still side with her. I still agree with the women.
But she
That's a
cries
hopeful
and
answer.
breathes at the right times, and it all sounds fake.
Oh my god, it sounds so fake. It's
Oh, and
that's the
oh, and by the way, Jewish Pie Guy says hi to everybody.
oh hey.
He's somewhere. But yeah, I watched her like a little bit of her testimony. It's like, woman, do you not know how to cry? Like seriously, it's like if are you trying to sell this or are you trying to just like
No,
I just
clearly
need
she didn't have the
Yo,
same coach as
Monty's in
Obama.
chat, yo.
Yeah, exactly. No, she's a horrible actress. Is the thing.
Gang,
What's up?
our other guest is in the chat.
Oh, hey.
Oh.
Sweet. So, send us your email or something, and we will email that over to you, and then you can comment. I would be very happy if you did that. So, and yeah, Derek is a flake. Derek will not remember, so you have to give it to us somehow. Tweet it at me. Tweet it at me and or say Saint of Bacon, and we'll get you on here ASAP. You are definitely more than welcome on here. So the thing that I was about to say about she's a horrible actress, and the reason why is that there's a number of reasons why. I will be going through in my video, but the first thing that she does is she pretends to be distressed by saying, "Hey everybody, and by the way, I want you all to know that by the time this is over, I'm probably going to need some caffeine." And she like is giddy and grinning when she says that. Like she's like like this is how supposedly distressed I am, except for I'm obviously not. And the thing
she's
is
actually excited because she gets to be on TV for once.
Well, no, do you know what it's deeper than that? Well, first of all, that's probably true, but it's actually a well-known phenomenon with liars is that when somebody is orchestrating when people like deceptive people are orchestrating a lie, they do what they call what the experts like the interrogators call duping delight, in which they exhibit a proudness that they're duping you. And they start feeling like and here's the thing. I know this very well, and I know how it works because I used to be a junkie. And when you're a junkie, you get really, really confident at lying to people's faces about, oh, how much does this bag of heroin cost? Oh, it costs only it totally costs $80. You have to give me $80 for this, and it really costs 40, but like you're just gonna take more of the money so that things like that. Just these semi-small lies, and what you do is that you become really, really eager to tell the lie, and you start thinking that your overt confidence with telling the lie is going to make people likely to believe you. And it actually works with most people. Like because most people kind of think that if somebody's a liar, then they're going to cower away in fear from the conversation. And so if somebody's very, very eager to present a lie to you, a lot of people will take it at face value, but it's absolutely not the truth. That's not how it works if somebody's, an elaborate liar. And so first she does that. And then, within about 45 seconds, she's doing the fake tear. It's not even fake tears. She's not even a good enough actress to like actually be tearing up. She just has a shaky voice. But what's funny about it is that she maintains the shaky voice through the entire speech. There's never any moment where she like regains her composure and just starts talking like a normal person, nor is there a moment where she gets to a particularly painful part and she kind of goes over the edge and it's hard for her to continue. It's the same exact shaky voiced monotone as if what?
No deltas whatsoever?
Yeah, no deltas. Yeah, no variations. It's the same exact shaky voice monotone as if, it's the same oh no, woe is me, I'm a fragile maiden voice that she's been practicing since she was 6 years old.
And the fact that she's so foggy on details.
Yeah. So I will be explaining all of that in my video, showing her footage, showing the expert of lie detection next to it, and that kind of a thing. And I'm excited for my video tomorrow. It's going to take me a long time. Oh, and by the way, while we're waiting for our guest, who said to tweet at them, did you tweet at them?
I told them to tweet at me.
Oh, okay.
He sent his. Hold on, I'm gonna send it to you.
Okay, so I'm gonna mute myself and go grab my little lime tart thing.
All right, Bacon, I'm shooting that over to you in the main chat. Do not want to dox this guy, so I tried to, but since he's not following me, I can't. And apparently, I didn't know that's a thing, but apparently it is. Weird. So since he's not following me, that just means he has taste. I'm sorry, you were saying, Jordan?
Oh, I was just gonna say, this is the original the original interviewee that we're expecting, right? So the post I had made today was specifically about supporting men and relating to the stress that men may feel at this time with the this kind of like circus, media circus that's going on, and that was what also motivated me because you know there was a couple, like there was a Kavanagh, not Kavanagh, Graham gave a speech today standing up for Kavanagh after Kavanagh yesterday gave a very emotional speech of his own. And both, after Kavanagh cried in his testimony, there were many vicious memes emasculating him for that. And then today, Graham, making a very strong statement in defense of Kavanagh's just personal experience was really beautiful moment of like, brotherhood, an expression of like actually trying to stand up for another man despite this, the feminazism going on.
Which is really kind of a nice thing because typically we guys don't stick together as much as women do.
Yeah, it was touching to me.
Very.
Wait, so you're saying this patriarchy thing's just a lie?
I'm probably going to say this, and of course, we can just lump it with all the other garbage I say. But if women think that we are actually going out and saying, "Oh, it's a guy, let's help him," that's just not the case. We tend to compete with each other more than anything.
Damn, so all that gender theory I took in college.
You will make a fantastic barista. Don't let them hold you back.
Yeah, I didn't. I only suffered through like 2 classes. Thank you, general education. Yeah, one of them was Introduction to Intersectionality, more or less.
I'm back.
Hello.
Hey.
So, the other thing I was just gonna say real quick, and then maybe we shouldn't talk about this Kavanagh bullshit anymore. It's just that the thing that I noticed, which is, I mean, I guess this is always going to be the case, but it's just so desperately pathetic that it happens like this every time, and it's so predictable, is that like when one of these guys makes that one sentence like, I believe her, believe women, this is what white male privilege looks like, there's inevitably going to be at least like 3 or 4 women commenting below, cheering him on, being like, thank you so much. I mean, they don't say it always in such explicit terms, but it's like, thank you for being my ally. Here's a few Cheetos that I'm going to throw to you. I'm going to, I'll keep you alive and keep you on a leash and make you beg for every bone that I throw to you. And it's so pathetic to watch it happen.
Wait, are we calling Cheetos hand jobs now, or hand jobs Cheetos?
Well, these are most, the guys that I'm thinking of are mostly gay guys, so technically no.
So that means they'll, in the heads of the feminists, consensually get to grab their boobs. I'm just trying to shit on that.
No, the thing that gets me about this whole believe women thing is, yes, I do definitely believe that horrible things do happen to some women. Happens to some men too, but I just think it's really kind of degrading to women to think that they can't ever possibly be bad actors.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, they can't be bad actors.
Don't you think there's also something to be said for like, okay, you cried wolf too many times, like all of you collectively, and you weaponized this for obvious, at least potential political purposes, at least potentially to gain power in the entertainment industry and now in high stakes politics. Like there's a very clear motive that you're doing this, and that it's very clear that a lot of it doesn't have any evidence or is like so extremely exaggerated that we really shouldn't be counting this as anything significant. And therefore, because of the fact that you did this too many times, we are officially putting our foot down. And now we believe none of you for the next 10 years because you abused your female privilege. And I'm sorry to anybody that's telling the truth, but that's how it is, because we have to teach all of you a lesson that you can't pull this crap anymore. And it's really a shame, but it's like sometimes you have to just say no to tattletales, say no, because otherwise it's just going to keep happening. And yeah, there will be some women that nobody, if it were to be the case, there could potentially be some women that people that bring up unprovable allegations that do happen to be true, but it's just like, well, you should have got a rape kit at the time, honey. Can't help you.
Or and wasn't one of them going on like, oh, there's for like a year there was like a roving gang of gang rapes at these parties. It's like, bitch, if that was a thing in a lily white area, that was gonna make the news like 30 years ago.
But I'll go ahead and let our new guests know that we are not doing the whole gang rape thing tonight. So, hi, you're safe. How's it going?
Okay. Digital gang rape?
Yeah, that's only on Thursdays. Mark your calendars.
That's the natural evolution of internet blood sports, digital gang rape.
Well, that already was digital gang rape if you were using headphones.
Yeah. They slip a roofie in your Discord server and then try to see what would
I
happen.
put them in my own. You never know, you luck.
Well,
Yeah.
Well, didn't Kavanagh stick like cocaine up his ass and gang rape like 5 women at the same time or some bullshit?
Now, see, that's someone that can multitask. I have total respect for that.
You want to hear some crazy false allegations? Someone
Absolutely.
getting that a ketamine dealer who was very high on ketamine had then somehow raped a girl, which I find to be
That would be so hard.
questionable. So questionable.
I didn't think ketamine was even still popping. I thought that was more of like a 90s thing.
Kaz, where you are. No comment. No. That was a long time ago in a galaxy far away.
Dude, that was last week. No, I'm kidding.
It was years ago. Numerous years ago. But what was I going to say? Oh yeah, there. This sort of one of the funniest moments of the hearing, and then I swear to God, we're just going to drop this and move on to our guest. is that there was a bunch of people clutching their pearls about the fact that this woman was trying to sort of entrap him into saying that he gets blackout wasted or some crap like that. And she's like, have you ever experienced a time in which you didn't remember what you did the last evening after drinking? And he's like, no. And she's like, are you sure basically? And he's like, wait, have you? And she's like, well, I don't have an alcohol problem. And it's just like, some crap like that. And it's so irritating because it's like, what is this room full? Like, is this the prohibitionists acting like people have literally never drunk ever? Like everybody who's ever drunk at all ever forgotten something. And the fact of the thing about alcohol, drinking, is that you do occasionally black or gray out, but I've never been in a situation except for one or two situations where I took a sleeping pill in my own apartment and fell and then woke up the next day and didn't understand why a bunch of my crap was on the floor and I had obviously fallen, hit me or whatever. But I've never been in a situation where I did something violent or anything along those lines and forgotten about it. Because anything intense ever happens when I'm on alcohol, then the adrenaline kicks in and I do remember it.
Right.
So
I can't think of a time that I ever got violent, blacked out and violent. I remember all that.
Yeah.
Exactly.
But as far as being, just being inebriated and passed out and blacked out and all that kind of stuff, yes, I have taken Benadryl.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I've done the whole Benadryl and drank thing. It was not fun.
So, guest, hi.
Hi. Okay, is my microphone good or?
Yeah, it's good.
Absolutely.
Blinsky. That's what you want to be called, Blinsky?
Yeah, let's go with Blinsky. That's sort of my political channel. I've got 2 channels. The Von Video is mostly just music that I make.
Okay, cool.
In that case, Zdravствуйте, Blinsky.
Oh, хорошо. Молодец.
So, Derek, I can't beat around the bush with this because this is how Derek introduced you and how I put in the preview is that you're somebody that went through a detransitioning.
That is right.
Well, good job, by the way. I would have never known by looking at you. So, you successfully come back from whatever that was, and I think that it would be completely intellectually dishonest to just act like we're not going to talk about that at all. And since you're a little bit late, I think that maybe we should get right into that. Talk about that.
Yeah. Well, I'm pretty no nonsense. I think nothing is offensive to me, so we can go in deep if you want.
Yeah, and then I'd love to talk with you about other such things. But the the detransitioning, I got to give a little bit of a preface. I don't know how much of my channel you've watched, but it's something that I've talked about a lot. And I made a whole video called Detransitioning the New Transgender YouTube Craze. And I've also made numerous videos about trans trenders. And the reason why I felt compelled to do such a thing is because of the fact that I've known trans people since 2007 is when I met my first friend who at some point started identifying as trans, identified as a lesbian at that point. But I mean, in retrospect, it was like not surprising that this person was, ended up in defining as trans. And in that person's case, they actually did not want to take hormones for many years, even though they suffered from extreme gender dysphoria, but they were afraid of the side effects of the medications and getting cancer. And so they wouldn't go on them. And then finally they decided that their gender dysphoria was crippling them and they went on it. And so that really kind of opened up my eyes towards just how hard it is for some people with gender dysphoria, that like it's not that they're doing it because they want to, it's that this was like a treatment that seemed most viable for them as an individual. But then I moved to the San Francisco Bay Area in 2007, and I was around a bunch of, blue-haired freaks with a beard that called themselves a woman and wore a mini skirt and, that kind of a crap. And they wanted they pronouns, and and it was like, whoa, this is a fad for some people. And so I know that there is that type of person out there, but at the same token, in terms of you, I have no reason to believe that you're absolutely any of these things. I don't even know, but I think that I would like to hear.
Yeah, well, I think I'm not most aptly described as a trans-trender, but I'm also not most aptly described as a genuine transgender woman. I think if you guys have ever heard the term autogynephilia.
Okay.
You know that one?
Yeah, that's what people say ContraPoints is.
Yeah, well, I think she is. Typically when you find intellectual trans women, or there's basically 2 versions of trans women that I found. And they're both different and unique in their own way. I don't want to insult anyone, but there's
you can insult ContraPoints though. Please do.
ContraPoints. I actually was subscribed to her channel for a bit, but I unsubscribed because it was like long form content, but the actual substantive points only warranted maybe like a 5-minute video.
Yeah, and then they're also intellectually dishonest. So.
Yeah. Well, I don't know.
Let's sorry. Moving on. Because
there's the type of trans woman who is who sort of comes up in life acting like a gay boy, or even just straight up acting like a girl, and they're like that their whole life, and then when they transition, no one's really surprised. This is like Blair White, for instance, is a great example of this. And then they typically pass very well. And then on the other side, you have the autogynephilic type, which oftentimes present very masculine their entire life. And then they'll just sort of all of a sudden come out and transition. They typically don't pass as well. I passed okay, but not super great. I was never able to get my voice right. And they're a version of trans women that's been around for a while, and there are plenty of autogynephiles that continue to live that life. They don't eventually detransition. Caitlyn Jenner is clearly an autogynephile, in my opinion. Once you know the differences between the two, it's really easy to pick out. Autogynephiles typically seem more autistic. Whenever you see like an autistic person who identifies as trans, or someone that seems really kind of spurgy, like I'm an example of someone who's pretty spurgy, and they start identifying as trans, there's a good chance they're the autogynephilic version.
Okay.
In the autogynephilic version, they've done studies on this, tend to actually inhabit positions tend to be in respected professions that require a lot of higher education. So there's a lot of doctors, lawyers.
Oh, like Mappa from Transparent.
Yep. Well, yeah, Mappa is a classic example of the autogynephile. Autogynephilic trans women tend to come out of the closet later in life too.
Yeah.
The Blair White version, they're going to be sort of insistent that they want to be a girl almost their entire life, and usually by the time they're 16, they're just presenting female entirely.
Yeah, and I've known those type of people. Like, growing up, I grew up right in the city of Seattle. Like I could, my high school, about 15-minute walk to the gay neighborhood, and so we would go there frequently. And so I used to know like homeless, runaway, or like kicked out of their parents' house, people who hadn't transitioned but eventually would go on too, and you could tell that they very, very likely would. Like, a lot of the time they were teenage boys that had female hips, and those were more of the probably the Blair White type.
Yeah, well, I guess I don't really know where to go from there. Is there any specific questions, or any topic areas you'd like me to?
Oh, well, I imagine some people do, but it's very so. Yeah, how about I direct this a little bit more? So, when was there a specific catalyst that you decided it was the option to at least identifying as an actual woman? Did you go on hormones? Was that because you saw a therapist or something, or was this just a decision, personal?
Well, I was at a very vulnerable point in my life. I had lost a lot of friends because I had left undergraduate school and sort of lost contact with people. I think I was very lonely. And also, I was falling down the dark pit that is alcoholism. I was a rampant alcoholic, and I would drink during the day and everything. And so my mind just was foggy. And I also, unfortunately, have obsessive compulsive disorder. And I don't know if you guys have heard of HOCD. Do you know what that is?
No.
That's called homosexual or obsessive compulsive disorder. That's where this is a thing that actually exists. It's where people with OCD they get fixated on the idea that they might be gay, even though they in fact are not. And I think there's a little bit of that going on with me. And so I became just absolutely fixated on the idea that I might be transgender. I think one of the major catalysts was just all of the media attention that was in the fact that it was sort of out in the open. And so I walk this line between, I want to take responsibility for my actions. I don't want to paint myself as a victim and be like, oh, I was tricked by the mainstream media. It's the mainstream media's fault for pushing it so hard. They made me make this bad decision when I was vulnerable. Because I want to take responsibility for my own actions. But at the same time, I have to recognize that there were a certain number of factors. If the topic of transgenderism had not even like broached the public public space, it's likely that I never would have done that. But I think it was a combination of my alcoholism, my loneliness, my OCD, and media coverage of transgenderism that I just eventually, over a course of years, convinced myself that I was transgender and that I wanted to live as a woman. And then I went ahead and I actually did do that. I went on hormones, and I lived full-time as a woman for over 3 years.
Huh. How did you get your hormones? Was there a medical professional?
Well, I went to Park Nicollet. I went to a doctor called Dr. Farias. She's one of these are called informed consent clinics, and they're, at first I thought it was a really great thing, and now I don't really know. Because the idea is, traditionally, if you were a transgender person, you would have to go to a doctor, and the doctor would run, for instance, like a trial period on you. They'd say, okay, you need to live as a woman for a year, and if you still want to transition, then we'll give you hormones. Informed consent clinic, they'll basically give you a diagnosis on demand. So you can go in and they'll be like, so tell me about your experience. They'll say, well, I've always wanted to be a woman. And then they'll say, and then she's literally said, like, on a scale from 1 to 10, how much do you want to live as a woman? I said 10. And then she just gave me the diagnosis of gender identity disorder. I think it was gender identity disorder, not gender dysphoria at the time, and gave me the pills on the first day. And then I was off.
Yeah, that's I would say I'm against that personally. But
from a medical standpoint, that just sounds extremely irresponsible. I mean, that's not taking the patient's well-being into account at all.
But oh my god,
Well,
anything else would be utterly transphobic. Like, oh my god. Come on, it takes me a second to switch into Valley Girl voice.
I tried my darndest to learn how to talk like a girl, so I could just talk like this from now on. Hey guys, Jocelyn here. How you doing?
That's impressive.
Anyway, yeah, I worked on it for a while.
It shows.
I can sound like Blair White if I try, but I mean literally like Blair White. I don't mean
Do
like.
it.
Well, but yeah, I understand that this is not like a popular opinion. This is not a PC opinion, but I've never been one to be PC. I'm a tranny, and I honestly, as soon as I transitioned, it's like I had a lot of female privileges, like ladies first. That is a thing. I'm sorry.
That's pretty close.
That's great. I love Blair White, and that is awesome.
Yeah, no, Blair White is really badass.
I liked Blair White a lot when she had the female privilege video. It was a revelation, and I showed it to many, many people and watched it many, many times. So that's why I can do that. I have this tendency to start mimicking the things I've watched over and over again. Like the Sargon video where he talks about Stephanie Guthrie, the man that got the guy brought up on criminal charges in Canada for tweets. He's like, meet Steph Guthrie, wearer problem glasses, professional feminist, and self-righteous Twitter activist. No, I know we're only seconds into this video, and you're already thinking to yourself, holy shit, she looks like a total cunt. And you'd be right. She absolutely is a total cunt. But I'm not as good at the Sargon voice.
I think you could use some work on the British accent, but I appreciate
yeah, I'm terrible with accents. Anyhow, but I've certainly tried. It's the point. So yes, that's a detour into voices. But when did you start to realize that you did not want to be transgender?
Well, I think it was just once I left school, I went out into the workforce, and everything just sort of slowed down because you just every day is essentially the same. It's just you do your 9 to 5, go home, stuff. And then I just noticed that there are certain inconveniences that come with being a trans woman, especially if you're a trans woman who doesn't exactly pass. You have people looking at you. You have people kind of, when you interact with people, they're a little bit different. And I just, and bathrooms are just not comfortable for me. I would always just use a unisex restroom just because I didn't want to have to deal with that problem. And so eventually I was like, okay, so there's a lot of cons. Now, what are the pros? And it was like, well, I mean, I'm not actually that much happier than I was when I was living as a man. I think at first I was, because it was this new exciting thing. I got to build a whole wardrobe full of women's clothes. I got to learn makeup. I started experiencing the world in a different way. And in that way, it was kind of enriching. But after a while, everything just sort of leveled out, and it was just me living my life. And I wasn't any happier than I had been before. So I was like, basically, I'm just creating inconveniences for myself by doing this.
Huh.
And I never quite felt at home with the girls or with the boys. That's the problem, because I was always, my personality wasn't that different when I was living as a woman as I'm right now. I probably sounded the same too. I didn't actually use that Valley Girl voice very often. So it was like, what's it? It's just like, you're gonna wear a dress or you're gonna wear a shirt, and it doesn't fucking matter, except wearing a dress comes with all these problems. And I just decided that the cons outweighed the pros, of which there were very few. Not to mention the estrogen and stuff caused me to gain a great deal of weight. I gained like 100 pounds over the course of like 3 years.
Wow.
And I since I went off the hormones, I've been losing. Slowly, but I have been losing. So
that's a side effect I didn't even consider.
Yeah,
testosterone has a big effect on your metabolism.
Yeah, it's way easy to build muscle, and that muscle burns fat and all sorts of stuff. But yeah, what you said, I want to come back to one thing that you said, kind of, which makes a lot of sense, and I want you to maybe expand upon this a little bit, is this notion of not being able to feel like you fit in with the guys or the girls. I've often wondered if there's the best word for you isn't transgender, but people who decide to, not because they have crippling gender dysphoria, but for whatever reason decide to transition, if they're largely doing it because they want to fit in with the girls. And you found that didn't end up actually working, regardless of whether was your motivation. How did you feel? Like, do you feel like that was maybe more your personality, or do you feel as if it turns out that women are actually still judgmental of trans women because they don't see them as real women?
I will say this, which is that the way I started being treated by women is dramatically different. Dramatically different. The biggest thing that I learned from transitioning is that women experience the world in a very different way. Mm-hmm. It was kind of astonishing. It took some getting used to. And some of it is, I think, that I was a trans woman, so it's not like I was experiencing the world as necessarily a bona fide woman. But there were a number of people who would treat me as if I were a woman, or a lot of times people would think I was a real woman until I maybe opened my mouth and the deep voice came out. And people are nicer to you. I think when you're straight men have this thing, and I'm sure gay men have it too, especially when people don't know if you're gay, where women are always they keep a little bit of distance, and that's everywhere. That's the cashier at the grocery store, that's at work. They are a little bit guarded, and when you're a woman, that whole I think they're doing that right because they don't want to give you the wrong impression, which is totally understandable. But when you're a girl, of course, or you're a gay man, it doesn't present that problem, and so then women completely change. And now all of a sudden they're a lot warmer. It's really bizarre. So I actually did, when I could say there weren't many pros, I think that was one pro, is that women are just a lot warmer, a lot more willing to be your friend, a lot less guarded.
I had a very funny experience when I was in San Francisco. One of the only nights that I ever did drag, and I've actually shown a picture from this. I don't want to dig it up, but I actually looked pretty good. Not like amazing, but I was thin. I looked believably female in terms of my outfit, and I was wearing like white kind of spandex leggings, shiny, and a sweater dress with a white belt and a kind of a Cher wig, with bangs that were straight across the forehead. And I didn't have tacky drag makeup on. I just had lipstick and eyebrows, and so I looked like an actual woman who would go out to a club.
You're looking fishy, as they say, fishy.
Yeah, and I made the mistake of walking through the Tenderloin neighborhood, which is about like the seediest, like scariest, most crackheady neighborhood on the West Coast outside of like Skid Row, Los Angeles. And so I walked through it by myself at probably like 11 p.m. And so it's all dark and everything. And I got hollered at like 4 or 5 times. And I not like by dudes that were maybe that would be cool, but like by crackheads and shit. And so it was actually kind of terrifying. And one of them I said hi back to, and he was like, "Oh shit, your voice is deeper than mine." And and so it was like, there are definitely disadvantages to being female in certain situations, because
of course, I'm not going to doubt that. Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's why women are guarded around men, because there's always a real risk.
Yeah.
There's a line to be drawn between, there's a middle ground between women don't have any disadvantages and all men are potential rapists. It's like women can be justifiably guarded, but that doesn't also mean that all men are monsters. There's a middle ground there.
Yeah.
Well, I think it's a very important middle ground. I mean, it's true. I mean, there is always going to be some kind of risk out there. It comes with being human, especially comes with being a human that is physically tends to have a lot less upper body strength.
Well, and also, and they're attracted to. Like there's it's not just the like I'm gonna mug you, it's the like I have an innate visceral reason to want to follow you around, and you can't really necessarily defend yourself, so how do you get rid of me?
Almost all women are easily physically overpowered by men. And so the only thing they have to work with is their language. And some people say that that's actually why women are quote unquote manipulative, is because they had to learn to be facile with their language in order to be persuasive, because they couldn't have recourse in their physicality. So
of course. I believe that has to be the case. I mean, it doesn't make sense biologically otherwise, so.
Although when you look at chimpanzees, it's also biologically true that men are more likely to be solitary and compete amongst themselves, where women are more likely to group up and gang up. And so when you look at chimpanzees, it's actually the female chimpanzees who are the ones who are deciding which men have power within the troop, because there's more females than men. And actually, the women, when they don't approve of the alpha male within the group, will throw rocks and other things at that alpha in order to create space for another alpha to take the spot.
Really interesting.
I think my ex-wife did the same thing.
Well, I think there's no question that women engage in a vetting process. I mean, women are very selective with which men they are going to deem to be worthy of being with them. Men obviously are not particularly selective. And that's obviously evolutionary, right? Because a man, evolutionarily speaking, the best man would be the man who can plant his seed in as many women as possible. Whereas with a woman, you need to find someone who's going to stick around and help you raise this kid. And so you're going to be looking for things like wealth and loyalty. Whereas with men, it's like, well, I just need to spread my seed as far as possible.
So Jordan, I'm very curious. Jordan being our non-licensed but degree-holding person that has credentials of a sort in this kind. Okay, and I'll ask you because you actually brought this up the last time you were here, or maybe it was on the stream on my live stream channel. You talked about how they talk so much about male privilege and female privilege, and or like it used to be the case that because apparently you studied in class transgender, what happens when people transition and how it comes with a new set of disadvantages and advantages based on being either gender. And then the radical gender abolitionists and radical gender deconstructionists or whatever, like the intersectionals, people who want to just get rid of gender entirely or whatever, they were trying to basically get rid of that part of the curriculum and act like it sort of doesn't matter. But I don't remember exactly how you phrased it. What would you have to say about this stuff?
Well, I know someone personally who started off a year ago, or maybe about less than 2 years ago, as going from male identified to non-gendered, and using only plural pronouns, even to the point of referring to themselves as we.
Like royalty.
And that was, and he had they had a female identified but bisexual girlfriend, who was actively bisexual, because she had a girlfriend, and they did not have any other partner. And then now that person has transitioned to a female identified person, and is on the hormone therapy, and has a partner now who is gender queer, female to male, but some not quite, but started as a female, is now gender queer. And so, all of that very complicated and political, and comes with a lot of storytelling and comic books and video blogs. And I've watched this process happen through social media. And, recently there was a comic book that came out from this person's genderqueer, not girlfriend, made a comic book about how they were upset about the pharmaceutical industrial complex requiring them to buy these drugs so that they can feel better identified with blah, 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 and how that pissed them off, because at the same time, they're like a radical activist, anti-pharmaceutical person. And at the same time, their girlfriend, who just transitioned into being a female, is talking about how excited she is that her bangs are getting longer because of the hormonal therapy she's taking. And it was a really just striking moment to me, where I'm like, okay, so regardless of all of this transitioning, the person that I personally know that went from being a male to a non-gendered to a female is still mating with female-bodied persons, regardless of the fact that this female-bodied person is now like hormonally transitioning or something genderqueer. And it was just like, kind of thought to myself, like, well, this is just such a, like, is it like, why, like, what is the necessity of going through this extra layer of chemical transitioning when you're still pretty much attracted to the same kind of person, and this person lives in San Francisco, which is a very accepting city. I mean, you can pretty much present as whatever you want here,
I've known a couple that was they were both transgender, one male to female, one female to male, and then they were partners.
Yeah. It just, I don't know, to me it just seems like, a lot of money, a lot of time, and I don't see the benefit necessarily.
Yeah, I mean, I guess I want to preface any comments I may have with the fact that I'm a pretty stout libertarian, and that means pretty socially liberal on these things, which means I have no intention of ever dictating how someone's going to live, and unless they're going to be hurting someone else. And so that's why I'm not hostile to people who are going to identify as genderqueer. I might be skeptical, but I'm not going to go up to them and insult them or anything like that. If it makes them happy to identify as genderqueer or to take hormones, then I Godspeed, good luck and Godspeed. It made me happy for a while. The thing where I get concerned is where you could be influencing people in vulnerable situations. Like, unfortunately, I think I might have been one of those people. I think I was in a vulnerable situation. I might have been influenced by the extensive media coverage into making a decision that I ultimately regretted.
Yeah.
And then you also, when you start dragging children into it, that's when I start getting really worried. You have children, if a kid wants to wear a dress, that's fine. But if a kid wants to start on hormones and you start putting them on like puberty blockers at like age 12, it just seems a little, I don't know. I'm not super comfortable with it. Because children are vulnerable and they rely on the judgments of others. They can't make their own decisions.
Well, not to mention, we have no idea what the long-term effects of these treatments are on a person, especially when so young.
Not to mention the gender fluid people, they're not happy about anything anyways. Like, no matter what you give them, they're just never going to be happy.
They're just resentful.
Well, my recommendation is an orgasm and alcoholism, but that's just me.
Yeah. No, for the record, I want to point out that we were all pretty, I would say for the most part, libertarian. Like, I guess technically, if we have to go by that stupid political compass test that we hate going by, Farrell actually gets a little bit authoritarian, right? But other than that, you're the only person who's at all authoritarian in any way, and it's probably just because you work in like management at I guess is maybe what it is.
It's because I'm an asshole.
Gotta have a healthy asshole if you want to have a healthy heart.
But most of us are left libertarians. Aside from Derek, who's a libertarian, right? Who's not, you know him.
I'm a galactic diplomat.
Intergalactic diplomat?
Yeah. Prince practices advocacy. I practice intergalactic diplomacy.
Well, good for you, whatever that means.
No, I get that. I like that.
I mean, I've taken the political compass test. I think you guys are referring to the political compass test, yeah?
The one that doesn't give you a neutral option, and so it's like
I got labeled as being center-left libertarian.
Yeah, that's what most of us are.
I think everything is really skewed at this point, because my perception is that I think the left has moved very, very far to the left. And so now people who are traditionally liberal almost seem like the right wing. And I'm one of those people.
Yeah. Well, yeah, they kind of have to put all their bets on these like 2 or 3 principles that ultimately ended up being authoritarian because they no longer had any sort of promises for anybody. Now, what?
Extremely fascist.
Yeah, so now they're the things that the left advocates for is you better not do this or we're gonna fucking kill you. We're gonna fucking punch you, and then we're gonna liberals get the bullet too.
Yeah, wasn't it in the Chris Ray Gun, one of his parodies? He's like, hit one of his lines about Antifa is, "We may be Hitler, but we're still not Trump."
Yeah.
So, that's a great song. I love that song.
I love it too. I love it.
What about, have you heard of the Thomas Jefferson Republicans?
No.
Have you never heard that term?
No.
Okay. It's a specific kind of Republican that goes very specifically towards the works of Thomas Jefferson and his beliefs about government.
Well, do you have like a skinny of what his beliefs were, just so for context?
So his main thing was, have you heard of laissez-faire?
Yeah, of course.
So that was his big thing, is government having the least, federal government having the least amount of interference in local government and local democracy. And that the federal government should have a laissez-faire attitude, essentially.
Yeah, well, I mean, the thing is, the founders of this country recognized that centralization of power is very dangerous. And that's why they set up our country as a federation rather than as like, say, Germany, where it's just there's one unified government. The idea was that we would be a bunch of independent states, essentially almost like independent countries, but then there would just be a little bit of basically an oversight committee just to deal with things that are hard, that like putting together a unified military and dealing with like interstate commerce. Problem is, whenever you give any power to anyone, they tend to want to grab more. And that's where you start having things like they read things into the Constitution that just clearly are not there. The big example is the Interstate Commerce Clause. So that was clearly designed because a state, it's hard for one state or the other to say, well, this is the law about, because you need to have some overarching to deal with the transport between the two states. But then they said, okay, so now if it affects interstate commerce, it's somehow within the purview of the Constitution, but of course everything affects interstate commerce. If a butterfly flaps its wings in Idaho, and so it's been this ridiculous shit. Like the federal government decided somehow that this guy growing weed in his backyard for his own personal use affected interstate commerce, and therefore they could prohibit it. And it's like, what the fuck are you talking about, bro? Like, that's clearly not in the Constitution.
Exactly. Yeah, and Thomas Jefferson was known for growing marijuana on his plantation.
Oh, really? I didn't know that.
And he was vehemently anti the idea of centralized banking.
Well, banking and usury in general have been the how do you say it? The bane of nations for time immemorial, for thousands of years. I mean, you can look in the Bible, and there's a warning against usury and loans.
It's known as Babylonian money magic, so it's said to come from the Babylonian times.
So, but what I wanted to say real quick about telling trans people, or potentially trans people or anybody, how to feel, and like are we the type of people who do that? The answer for me is no, but either state your pronoun and it be he or she, like, and try to have it be something that's not counterintuitive, like, if you don't pass and you blatantly don't pass for a particular reason, except that maybe you want to give it a few months before you start telling people that you want the different, if your hormones are new, maybe wait a moment, just be reasonable. I would prefer that, but pick one, or don't give a crap if somebody calls you he or she, except that people will get confused either way. And if you don't give a crap, that's fine. Second you start ordering me around, I will not hang out with you. Like the second you start biting my friend's head off because you were non-committal and you can't choose a pronoun and you're demanding they them pronouns, then and like I have to introduce, like every person that I introduce to you, I have to, because people always ask, they're like, is that person a man or a woman? Are they trans? And I'm like, well, they're non-binary. They go by they, and it's like I have to have that little conversation with literally everybody I ever introduce you to. How about not? How about no? And so that is where I personally draw the line. And I think that the question as it relates to libertarianism and government, it seems so incredibly obvious that the LGBT movement got completely, like every issue within the LGBT movement has just been completely abandoned, aside from like making sure guys are barebacking on prep, because barebacking is good. It's good to have unprotected sex, everyone, just so you know, get on prep, have unprotected sex. Aside from signing people up for prep, the only thing that people talk about is like should the government have a say over your pronouns? And it's so easy to think that that was something that the Democratic Party was hoping to weaponize a population of people to do their fighting for, so that they could have this, we've talked a lot on this stream about transgender people being feminists, kind of attack dogs in order to get more control over spaces. And in terms of a federal level, the transgender lobby, people will be like, oh, you're not, my rights are being trampled upon because I'm just asking for self-respect and dignity. I'm just asking for my personhood to be acknowledged as valid. And it's like, no, you're asking for to be able to federally mandate how people talk. And it's so obvious.
Which is blatantly against the First Amendment, obviously, right? You can't mandate speech. And that's what Jordan Peterson was about. Of course, Jordan Peterson was from Canada, where they don't have fucking freedoms like we do. Yeah. So they couldn't allow that. But in the United States, you can't do that.
I was going to say, can I pick my own adjectives?
Yeah, well, that's the thing. I mean, it really comes down to the left, in particular the postmodern left, have this inclination to want to govern speech and language. They want to control what words mean, and they want to change. They want to change by fiat. They want to say, now this word means this. Like, for example, racism, right? Racism, since the beginning of time, has meant thinking of people in terms of their ethnic, breaking people into races, and then oftentimes treating them differently based on that race. That's just what the term meant, and it came about naturally because language grows naturally and organically. But then the postmodernists said, no, what it means now is prejudice, or what is it? Prejudice for power, or I can't remember what it is. The plus power.
It's race prejudice plus power.
Yeah, and it's like, well, wait a second, that's not what that's meant. And they're like, well, now it's what it means. It's like, who are you to say?
And the fucked up thing is that that's not even all they mean. They mean like this whole elaborate, like what they actually mean is
Satan, more or less.
Well, I would say the combined history of what happened when European settlers brought African slaves over to the Americas, and there has been a long history that has unfolded ever since then, and how race relations, mainly in the United States, between African Americans and white people have evolved ever since then, but only in terms of what white people do to black people, not the reverse. And then you can kind of talk about Native American people, and then occasionally you can talk about Asian people, except for when it becomes confusing and then you can't do it anymore.
Well, I do think there's a serious element of self-hate among white people on the left. I mean, you look at Antifa people. Antifa crowds are almost totally white. I mean, I
have a whole video called it's like 8 reasons why Antifa is so white.
Well, I think it really comes down to, for one, I think a lot of it comes down to just people hating their dads. I think there's a lot of white girls who resent their fathers, and we could get into Freudian psychology on that. But in their mind, the state has become their dad, and they see in their movement is essentially just them rebelling against dad subconsciously.
Well, I think a lot of it, especially with the kids that are really into Antifa now, who are mostly under 25, because I would say most of them are under 25. You if you're an over 25 Antifa person, like, that is just sad. Like, that is so sad.
It's sad if you're an under 25 person.
It's sad. Yeah, it's sad if you're Antifas are just sad. But like, I think that one of the things that and hey, this is not something that I am putting onto other people without bringing myself up in any way, because this is something that happened to me, which is that I was one of the Janice Fiamengo wrote a book that she published. Well, she didn't write it, and she published a book of essays from young men called Sons of Feminism, and it's about boys who grew up in the feminist world or had mothers who were feminists or something related to that. And I was totally that. And I came from a very, very bitter divorce where my mother felt very, very entitled to just trash talk my dad all the time and say all sorts of horrible things about him all the time. And I mean, and granted, a number of the things she did legitimately believe and they weren't true and they were just lies. Like, I'm not going to get into it. But this is something that men's rights advocates and activists talk about a lot. Paul Elam calls them uncle daddies, where it's a guy that kids see, maybe usually every other week or so, and then maybe like one weeknight during the off week, and that's all they ever see their father. And then the woman has a tendency, because of the fact that she's milking him financially, to demonize him and basically act like he deserves this treatment, and therefore she tries to convince the kids that he's bad and that they don't want to go over there, and like all these different, like, oh, your dad was so bad to me, blah 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 blah. And I think that that's easily like a psychological mechanism for justifying the way that she's just exploiting this situation. And so when you get Antifas, it's not even so much that they hate their dads, but they have this like mythic demonization instilled upon them, often by their mothers, in this like weird, twisted uncle daddy situation where they don't even really know their dad.
Yeah. It's a fundamentally resentful philosophy. Now, I don't know, have you guys heard of, this is getting a little bit, not fringe, but a little into a new area. Have you heard of, there's Immanuel Kant, I believe it was, came up with the idea of slave morality versus master morality?
Oh no, that was Friedrich Nietzsche.
Oh, that was Nietzsche. Thank you.
Yep.
Thank you. I'm glad someone else knows that. Well, and of course, it doesn't just apply to slaves and masters. It applies. It's about the way of viewing life, and I think it's an interesting. Basically, he says there's two kinds of people in this world. There are people who. The slave morality is the kind of person who they perceive themselves as victims. They believe there's an oppressor above them. And sometimes there is. Actually, often there is. I mean, that's why it's called slave morality, because oftentimes, I mean, it started with people who actually were slaves and serfs and stuff.
So literally every man in the Western world should have that.
Yeah, well, slave morality. And the idea is then, okay, so what is your ethical compass? Well, your ethical compass when you're that is actually just anything the master is for, you are against that. So it's just a contrary.
No, people shouldn't have that. That's dumb. But sorry, keep going.
So a lot of times, so slave morality is oftentimes actually determined by the oppressor's philosophy. It's not independent. It's just whatever the oppressor believes, the slave wants to destroy. And so the slave morality is a very destructive philosophy. It's basically about tearing things down. It's the philosophy of riots. It's the philosophy of Antifa tipping over trash cans, shit like that. It's about destroying things. It's the philosophy of postmodernism. Master morality is where you set your own first principles, like, Immanuel Kant's categorical imperative or something. You set your own principles and you affirmatively create a life for yourself, and you make decisions not based on what someone else thinks, but based on your own perception of what you want in this world, what you want the world to be like, and you move forward. And so slave morality these days isn't about being an actual slave. It's about you're actually enslaving your own mind, because now you're not creating your own goals anymore. You're just whatever, for instance, Donald Trump says, you're against that.
Yeah.
Immediately.
Yeah. I see.
You just basically nailed it, by the way.
Yeah. That's what Kanye was really talking about. That makes sense.
Well, it's interesting because even in the philosophical or spiritual mindset, there's a lot of talk about the achievement of mastery or the achievement of enlightenment, which is a level of mastery. And that level of mastery is the ability to be the creator of your experience of reality.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, there's this thing where I think, and I think there are people who are born leaders, and there are people who are born not to be leaders. And that doesn't mean they're born to be slaves, but I think as part of our evolution, it wouldn't make sense if everyone was born to be a leader, because then we would be in constant conflict. Because every leader needs people to lead.
There's a distinction between mastery and leadership. I think that's seen.
Yeah. So I guess all I'm trying to say is I think some people have a hard time arriving at a master morality without a leader bringing them there.
Like a guru situation.
Like a guru, or a lot of people, they mimic a master morality by turning to, for instance, God. People, for instance, don't have actual, at least people in the United States, for the most part, don't have actual, they're not slaves to anyone. So what they do is they create, and this is going to be very controversial, but they create in their minds a master. They want to be slaves so much that they create a master called God, and they worship him.
Or money.
Or money, right? Yeah, anything. And they make themselves subservient to something because they feel more comfortable when there's someone else who's in charge.
Uh-huh.
And I don't think that's a fault. I just think that's a human trait.
Yeah, I feel as if there was elements of so these people that demonize the white male patriarchy and privilege, like privileged white males, that's something that Jordan and I in particular are, since we actually lived in San Francisco at the same time, we're very acquainted with a specific crowd of people who did that to both of us. Like they like literally took out their little personal angst on each of us, maybe in some ways one another worse in different ways. But I got a whole fuck ton of it just because I don't want to get into the reasons why. Just, a lot of people knew me and they kind of it became basically like a vulture fest, a feeding frenzy of people being like, oh, it's safe to pick on him for being white and privileged. Well, I always kind of wanted to tell him off, and so people were doing that, and it got to the, and I started to realize after, like,
additionally, I just want to add, not only for being white and privileged, but then shamed for being a gay man who has not adopted the feminist standpoint.
Yeah. Yeah. Well,
that makes us traitors.
Yep.
Well, and for me, I was attacked like for achieving stuff that these people wished that they did. Like, I was literally told, like, oh, well, I don't care that you've made, produced numerous albums of music that you produced and and also for other people, and that you've done all of these things. For the record, I've never even listened to it, but I don't care that you did that because I could have done it too if I had all of your privilege. And it's like, well, how would you even know? You didn't even listen to it. But like that was like the level of just blatant hater, and it became clear to me that it was just about this resentment thing that they were doing this, and also that it wasn't even about me, because I mean, these were people that didn't really know me. Like, they had never like come over to my house and hung out with me by myself, let alone listen to my music, let alone looked at how I made my, like all of the friends that actually made music with me, like literally every person that I could possibly name that went into my room and sat there and hammered out a song with me was like one of my besties for life, and I'm still friends with that person. Like I can't think of a single person like that who managed to like turn on me and say that they didn't like me, because I think all of those people saw just how hard I worked and had an entirely different respect for me as an individual. But some of these people, it was just like it was very clear that I was this like mythic. For some reason, my existence made them feel bad about themselves. Like they wanted to believe that if it wasn't for like white men like me, they would be happy, and because maybe they wanted to be musicians or maybe something like that. And it became painfully clear when this one guy who like, oh god, this guy is such a shitbag. I hate this guy so much. He I don't even want to get into the story. But he really sucks. Like he was one of the worst out of all of them, and also made it clear that he really he secretly thought all of my art was really, really cool, but he mostly wouldn't say so, you know, like that kind of a guy where it's like, oh, so you're actually a fan, but you try to trash talk me publicly, except for you've confessed that secretly you like it. Oh, okay, you're a piece of work. And one time this girl that we know, who's black, she turned into a big raving SJW because she went to Berkeley, and it was actually really sad because she was a really close friend of mine for a while. And you know, like a girl that like we slept in the same bed together numerous times just after bars and stuff, you know, but like that level of good friend. And she just started hating white people all of a sudden, which was upsetting to me because a white guy that had slept in the same bed as her numerous times, so that's going to be a little upsetting to me. And she posted something like, oh my god, and she put in quotes, my quote unquote diversity teacher accused a student of white male bashing. What an idiot. And she probably said, I couldn't even with that class or something, you know? And so all these people were like, yeah, fuck him. And I was like, I tried to say something kind of compassionate, like, hey, I realize that you're going through a phase of your life where you're trying to hate white people, but like these posts are not super productive. You know, I said it in a lot more tactfully and a lot longer kind of a thing. And so it went back and forth for a little while. And then this guy posted, and he was like, and this is a white guy, and he posted, you should have asked the guy, what's your point? And so I responded to his comment, and I said, yeah, actually, that's exactly what you should have asked the guy. You should have had him explain himself. You know, because that would be productive. That would be interesting to know what he means by that exactly. Why is it bad to bash white men? That would be productive for everybody. If he's a diversity teacher, you should have asked that question, even if you're being a little cunt about it, even if you're saying, what's your point? You know, like, do ask that. And then as all I said was, you know, yeah, you should have asked that. Ask him to explain himself. The white guy who had said that said, never mind, I take it back. I don't agree with anything Prince says. Or basically, I don't remember exactly what he said, but he was like, you know, like as soon as I said that I agreed with him, he had to take it back. And it was so funny. It was just like the funniest thing where it was like, okay, this is not about me. He doesn't know. It has nothing to do with me or my statements or anything besides what his fictitious oppressor is in his head, which I guess is like white guys that he's jealous of because he's not enough like them or something. I don't fucking know.
It actually, the crazy thing is, it actually doesn't matter what the punching bag is, as long as there's a punching bag. You're just the archetype of the oppressor. You're actually an empty category to these people. They may not realize that. And that category has been filled over the generations by many different people. It's been filled by blacks in the times when they were lynched. It's been filled by Jewish people in obviously the Nazi era. It's filled by, right now it's, what?
Irish Americans.
Irish. People like to have someone to say, that's the bad guy. And it feels really good because it serves a number of purposes. So if you get to, for instance, you get to feel more unified with your brethren because you say, well, that guy's not one of us, but I'm with you all. We have something to rally around. And then also, whenever you fail at something, you can, instead of having to accept responsibility for your failures, you can say it was this guy's fault. So it actually doesn't matter if it's a black guy or a white guy or anything, or a Jewish person. It just matters that there's someone that you can point at and say, no, that's the bad guy.
Yeah, actually, all social animals, I think all like wolves and probably chimpanzees have scapegoats that they do that with, and it like helps the whole tribe to be able to blame things. And yeah, it's a strange thing. So.
And I like to go and look at who is the one emceeing this crazy circus, because that's probably the one who's actually the bad guy.
Yeah. Who's the ringleader? Like in San Francisco, there's like a few particular bad actors that you can like easily isolate that they just sit around on Facebook all day, like patrolling. Like there's this one guy who knows thousands of people, so it's safe to bring him up. Like I'll ask Jordan, have you ever encountered this black gay guy named Brandon Drew Holmes?
No.
Oh my God, you're lucky. This guy is fucking insane.
Yeah, I stay away.
Yeah, he I think he has 2 Facebook accounts because he gets locked out of one of them. But he's one of these guys that thinks that he's right about everything because he's black. And it can, and the conversation can literally boil down to, you prove him wrong, and then he says, okay, but you're white. Reliably. And then one time, and he'll even do it to black guys. He'll be like, well, but you're siding with the white guy, so fuck you, and it's just and that particular guy is so obnoxious, and for whatever reason has this heinous grip over people live in fear of being called racist by him or something, that they allow him to kind of terrorize everybody. But he's a psychopath. He's it's why people don't just unfriend him, I have no idea. He's completely unpleasant always. He's never he's getting in fights with black people all the time, telling black people that they date too many white people, and that all sorts of things like that. That's all he ever does, and it's just it would be
most people are so afraid of conflict, to be perfectly honest. It doesn't matter how right or wrong the person is, they are afraid of any kind of fiery energy. It makes them they have post-traumatic stress disorder, they go into shock, they completely shut down, and they will do anything to stay away from it. And so people like that, who probably are malicious people, are totally playing off of that.
Yeah,
I can totally see that.
I think a good number of the ringleaders of SJW mobs are narcissists, where their ultimate goal is simply just to get validation for themselves. They want to get people, they want to signal their own virtue by saying, they think by pointing out someone as being not virtuous, they can signal that they are, in contrast, virtuous, and then they can rally people around them, and they can feel better about themselves. Because, of course, narcissists deep down actually hate themselves.
Yeah.
But they...
Well, and we have to remember that there are paid agitators out there, and those people are reckless and ruthless. And I'm glad you brought up the topic of narcissism, because it's been on my mind, and it's something that's personally very important to me, because there's a misconception about the original research. The guy who originally came up with the concept of narcissistic personality disorder. What it is a disorder of a natural part of our personality that is the narcissistic personality, right? Narcissism comes from a myth. Myths essentially were ancient ways to describe truths and observations about our own selves. Every myth is, if from a Jungian point of view, every myth is talking about the subconscious and the collective conscious. And so when you look into, the original Narcissus, a story of Narcissus, the popular story of Narcissus, the myth, says that Narcissus, fell in love with his image in the reflection of a river, and then was turned into a flower. This is a very truncated version. and that there was a being named Echo that was in love with Narcissus, but because of the unrequited love, Echo, was like this tragic tale. And so that was meant to color the idea that, oh, somehow Narcissus was a horrible person because he neglected this half nymph, half human being named Echo. Right. Now, when you go deeper into the research, you find out that's not the original story of Narcissus. That was a later story. The original story of Narcissus is that Echo was actually in love with Pan, and Pan was in love with Echo. And the reason why Echo became what is now known as an echo, which obviously we can describe scientifically, but back then the myth was that Pan, which is the god of music and merriment, taught Echo how to be this beautiful singer because he was so in love with her. Right. And so knowing that, it's actually not a tragic story about Echo. It's a beautiful story. And the story of Narcissus is also not a story of a somehow dysfunctional human being. But what it is that back then there were no mirrors, right? So Narcissus was a representative archetype of the first time a human being, fully self-aware, fully awake, kind of, you're a human, saw himself, and in seeing himself became fully in love with that, right? And so, it's this idea of like, when he saw himself, he saw utter perfection. He did not want to change one thing about himself. There was nothing. And in seeing that utter perfection, it actually was like looking at an infinity mirror, right? Where he was, where the ancients say that the universe is within. So it was like he actually saw the universe within himself, which was for a time when there were no mirrors or reflections. This was like a powerful moment, right? And then he was actually, the gods honored him in immortalizing him as a flower, right? It does not sound like a punishment to me. It sounds like he became an immortal being as a flower, right? Which actually means he became one with the earth, right? And flowers are like the fragrance of the earth. So this is about unpackaging what narcissism really is. And when someone has a disorder of the narcissistic personality, it's like when that person looks in the mirror and they're not happy with what they see. And all they think about is how it should be different, or how things need to be different. And
that's
how they
really interesting. Yeah, I never thought about it that way. I'm glad you made that observation. That's really interesting.
Definitely. It almost sounds like a story of self-transcendence as opposed to what we were taught, which was, basically being completely wrapped up in the self.
Thank you for hearing that.
And I suppose there's you want to have a narcissistic quality to some extent. Because you don't want to feel like shit about yourself all the time, but you also want to get better. And, a very obvious example of that is fat acceptance. I'm not saying that you should hate yourself for being fat. I'm pretty overweight, but I don't hate myself. But I'm also taking steps to solve the problem. You can want to be better than where you are now and still not hate yourself as you are now.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I made electronic music with vocals for years. And hey, if there's something where you need to learn how to have a healthy level of ego, that is it. Because otherwise you are not going to do that. Like, you are never going to, making an electronic music song that you like is pretty hard, but then actually singing into a microphone, recording yourself, and then listening to it and feeling okay with that is a whole new level. And then doing it in front of people, that is a whole new level. And so you have to learn to, appreciate it. But then at the same time, you have to have the endlessly self-critical thing so that you improve. And it's very strange. People are like, oh, you have such a big ego. And it's like, okay, but you also don't understand how obsessively self-critical I am. And I think that takes a little bit longer to get to know. So it's a strange like anybody who ends up in a situation where they are doing creative work is the way that I see it. But I imagine there's lots of different facets of life where people get into these infinity mirror type things that happen, or vaguely imperfect infinity mirrors, and pull themselves out of it for various reasons.
I think that I've gone deep into this because, Trump is like constantly put in this position of, oh, he's such a narcissist and everything. But then, when I look at everything, I'm like, well, there's a lot of things going on a world stage level in terms of diplomacy and trade reformation, and that I think are actually helping our country. And so when I looked deeper into this idea of narcissism, I was like, well, is the attack then on the attack of the fact that he maybe he actually really does believe in himself, right? And when he says, I'm great, we're doing the best that we can do, he's actually believes that it's coming from a place of security and self-knowing, self-awareness. Like, what if I give him the benefit of the doubt and he actually is an intelligent, strategic, self-aware person who is not just like some child or something that people try to say. And then if that's true, if I do give him the benefit of the doubt and I look at that, then I say, well, then why are so many people afraid of a person who actually believes in himself? And who shows such utter confidence.
Well, and especially considering he's trying to improve their nation.
Right. And that seems like, well, that kind of, right, that's when I look at like, okay, mass trauma and like, like what does it take to make a person fear, strength? Not force, not aggression, but just like, inner strength.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's so funny because like I don't remember the Reagan years. I was too little to remember them. I knew that I was supposed to hate him, but like, and I remember thinking that Daddy Bush, the first George Bush, kind of had this like Skeletor voice where he was just really annoying. That's like all that I really remember about him. Like I remember being a little kid and he was like talking on the radio, and I was like, Mom, I hate this guy. And she's like, that's our president. Do you know that? And I was like, yeah, but I didn't. Like, I just remember that. And then Bill Clinton, I remember liking him in that, like, in the same way that I liked Obama, in that he was kind of just a big old phony, like say like, and knowing now what I understand about politics, it's just it's just easy to ignore them and just be like sort of happily okay with what's going on because they give you warm fuzzies, and that's the entire point. And then George W. Bush, he had this kind of like whoever his warm fuzzies, like whatever good assuring attitude that it was supposed to market himself to, it wasn't to me. It was to the other states, to like not people who lived in New York City or Seattle, and so I think about all those people, and then maybe Reagan. Everybody else was just people that didn't have this intense, charismatic, whatever we're talking about, this like weird feeling of like extreme self-confidence. It's something that I've never seen in my in all of the presidents since I've been alive, and I think people aren't used to that. Like we're so used to this idea that everybody's supposed to be pandering, but also this notion of like, you know, not just that, you know, humility is a virtue, which it definitely is, but it's more so that like forced modesty is the most important virtue by which you approach all other things. Like the first thing you have to do is make sure that you're totally modest and that you don't boast about yourself. And then you can do whatever else you're sort of supposed to do. And it's like that has been so conditioned into everybody my age, at least, since the time that we were born, that people can't fathom just completely confident attitudes. And then you take somebody who's up against as much as Trump, who, you know, they're just throwing everything they can all day, every day at him. And so obviously, of course, he has to stand up straight. Of course he has to, you know, like it would be, you could make an entire mini series set in an alternate reality called, you know, the day Trump hated himself. And it would be like the end of the world, you know, like it would be this.
Well, I think a lot of humility that people have is not even real. It's masking actually a feeling of being perfect, and so a lot of people will act modest. But then when they're criticized, elitists, they're prudes, is what they are. They don't want to. Donald Trump isn't afraid to open himself to criticism. And so he doesn't do the humility thing because he doesn't care if someone then lashes out at him. I want to tell you guys a quick story, and then I want to tell you what the story means metaphorically. So I used to play in band in college. I actually played with Derek. He and I were in the same band, wind ensemble. I played the saxophone. And this is a true story. One day we had a concert, and so the whole stadium was filled up for the end of the semester. And we were all playing this music together, and there was a repeat sign. So you're supposed to go back to the beginning of one section and start, you know, and repeat that bit. But I completely forgot about it. I just missed it. And so I just kept plowing ahead while the entire other band went back to the beginning to do the repeat. But I plowed on so confidently and so obliviously that I single-handedly forced the entire band to bend to my will, and they all jumped down to where I was. And that's what Trump is. Trump he's such a powerful force. He forces people to play on his game rather than the other way. It's a failure of code switching. So code switching is right. People speak differently in different ways in different contexts. You talk in a different way to your boss at work than you talk to your best friend when you're when you're gabbing in bed together. You change your vocabulary, your cadence, everything. And there's code switching that happens all in politics, in all the time. You know, that's the whole, he's not presidential thing because he doesn't use that language. He doesn't use postmodern language. He I don't know if he might even be incapable of code switching. He has one way of speaking and he uses that all the time. And it's not so he does not tailor the way he speaks to the way other people speak. He forces everyone to speak on his terms. Yeah. So that's why we have everyone using the terms fake news now. Think of all the words that Trump has created or at least popularized. That
Bigly.
What?
Bigly.
Yeah,
he's Kofefe is obviously a silly example.
But it doesn't really matter, right?
But the thing is, he's so powerful. He controls the way we talk. You know, he has forced the entire. I mean, I forced an entire band to follow my place in the music. He formed an entire fucking nation. He forced to change the way they speak about politics.
Yeah, and you know, to what to what Prince put out, the previous presidents were kind of more of a representation of the slave morality, whereas he is now definitely a representation of master morality, where the previous presidents constantly were under the pressure of popular opinion and pandering and having to appear sympathetic and kind and humble and all these things, whereas he is clearly creating his own set of values, and doing so in a very strong way. And I think that would be ultimately why very skeptical conservative folks who tend to believe conspiracies and such see him as a self-motivated actor rather than a puppet or something, whether or not that's true.
You're right. Yeah, I mean, his actions are not dictated. His actions are never just reactions to what other people are doing. It's always, I mean, they are. I mean, he tweets replies to things people say and stuff like that. But he does not base his own personality based on other people's personalities or own decisions. He comes up with in his head independently the idea of what's the right thing to do. For instance, tariffs. Everyone around him said tariffs were a bad idea. And everyone, even Republicans, conservatives, mainstream media, everyone was like, don't do the tariffs. This is a bad idea. People who were with him all the way were against the tariffs. But he just decided, nope, I like tariffs. And so he just did it. He didn't care that.
And the New York Times has written an article about how now they straight out said in the article, even if he wasn't president, it's likely we would keep the tariffs in place.
Really? I didn't know that.
Because what's happened is China has no recourse. They have no legitimate recourse to the tariffs because we buy over 200 billion or plus, I don't know, hundreds of billions of dollars worth of merchandise from China, and we are tariffing them about $200 billion worth of tariffs. China doesn't buy enough goods from the US to even match more than $60 billion worth of tariffs. So China has no trade recourse against us because they don't import enough goods from the US.
Yeah, that's the idea. I mean, it's like, I mean, if you escalate the trade war, they can only escalate it to some point, at which point they have no more power to escalate it.
Nothing more to leverage.
Yeah, I don't like trade wars, but I can see the appeal of tariffs. I was never one of those hardliner tariffs are a bad idea. I'm more of the let's wait and see what happens. I think there's clearly a problem with China. I don't think it's a good thing that most of the clothes on my back, this computer, everything around me is made in Asian countries. There's nothing's manufactured here. It's kind of fucked up. You know, and
did you hear that there are a lot of Americans are no longer wanting to buy things that say made in China, so they're stamping made in Japan instead?
Oh, they're just falsely doing that. Well, that's the thing. China is a bunch of fucking assholes too. I work in the profession that I work in. I don't want to give it away, but I read a lot of case law, a lot of judicial opinions, and I come across a lot of cases in which China engages in totally illegal and bullying tactics to crowd other business competitors out of the market and make it impossible for U.S. manufacturers to compete. There's this practice called dumping. Dumping is where the Chinese company will sell their products at such a low cost that they don't even just not make a profit. They actually take a loss. So it's a long-term strategy. So they will start selling watches at, let's say, like a stupidly low price. And they're taking a loss, but they're banking on the fact that no one can compete with them because the watches are such a low price. They're going to destroy every competitor until they're the only one left, and then they're going to raise the prices and they're going to make it all back.
Oh, quick! I have to interrupt real quick. Derek just popped on, and so we have to be careful. We have to be careful what we talk about in regards to this, or they're going to throw him in a cell.
Oh yeah, Derek, you're in. Where are you again?
No, I'm in Hong Kong. Hong Kong is China done right. There's no.
Hong Kong.
Well, you're cutting in and out.
Oh, I'm sorry. Man,
Well, I think
this time I have my proper microphone set up, so I was hoping I'd have good audio.
This isn't bad. I saw this. I don't know if it was Vox. I hate admitting that I watch Vox sometimes, but they had a a piece on how Hong Kong used to have, of course, all of those neon lights that were the inspiration for Blade Runner and other cyberpunk, but now they're being replaced with just LEDs. So I think it's a damn shame that Hong Kong doesn't look like. I mean, I'm guessing, Derek, it doesn't really look like Blade Runner anymore.
You know, I'm glad you mentioned that, because the other day I was like walking around and there was like all these like purple lights over this like super slummy kind of an area and stuff. And like now that the typhoon came through, you have like some swinging cables and flickering lights and shit. So it kind of does have that like cyberpunk feel. It's good enough for me. Good enough for me. I'm not complaining, but God, I was gonna hop on last week too, but I've had like this stomach flu. It's been like the worst ever. I ate a whole raw zucchini and I regret it. It's like the worst idea ever.
You ate a raw zucchini?
I used to do it all the time in China, zero repercussions, and like this time it was a bad idea.
Yeah,
so
those are supposed to be used as dildos, not as food.
Oh, I put it in the wrong end. God damn it. But no. But it's okay though. I had a solid shit the other day. I scooped it up.
I'm just glad it wasn't the pineapple.
In my arms, and I named it Mercy. So I am back to normal. At least I'll take it. But I'm probably never drinking again. Never drinking again. Never smoking again. Now I know exactly what all of the worst health issues are like, because I had a stomach thing. It's like the worst sickness I've had in forever. I'm like such a pussy about it.
Space Dad just found Jesus.
Food poisoning is pretty bad. Oh, I wanted to just say real quick, because I kept wanting to find a time to interject this earlier, just because it's such a funny little thing, and then I just had to get it out. Did you guys ever read that blogger, and he published a book, Stuff White People Like?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I used to love that shit. I mean, he was kind of on. Basically, it was stuff hipsters like, but like hipsters like, it was totally on point.
No, but that the thing about it is that he would acknowledge that that's what it was, because it would say things like stuff white people like, sports memorabilia. If you're going to buy sports memorabilia, it has to be made no later than 1985. If it was made in the 90s or later, that will cast you in the category of the wrong type of white person. And there's nothing worse than being the wrong type of white person. And so he would acknowledge that it was fucking like hipster white people. And then one of the things that he put in it, which it just perfectly speaks to the like our little faux, like fake humility attitude that we've all been raised in I guess like hipster millennial culture or whatever, or maybe Gen X culture too, a little bit, is this he had a whole chapter or whole entry called self-deprecation, and he was like every white person alive thinks that they're smarter than everybody that they know, except for it's not really cool for everybody to know that you feel that way. So you have to constantly make fun of yourself. And, like that was, so I thought that was a really cool thing. And so obviously Donald Trump doesn't do any of that. And the other thing that I was sort of thinking is that Donald Trump, the media circus and frenzy that goes on and on and on about him, you would think that he's like clapping, as they say in this crappy part of the internet. Like if you're Cat Black, this is what she would say. You would think that Donald Trump is clapping back all the time. He's actually not. He tweets like occasionally about the stupid drama that they throw at him. But like other than that, they will write like seriously 100 little tabloids based off of like something he says in passing out of an airplane. Like they're like, Mr. Trump, blah, 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 blah. And he says like 15 seconds worth of something and then walks away, and they like write 100 tabloids about it.
Well, we live in the era where tweets are news, which is completely new. But anyway,
guys,
I don't want to interject. Sorry, I have to interject. I think I'm going to have to sign off just because it's a little bit past my bedtime. Derek, I'm not doing it because you came at just know. I really appreciate that you invited me to come over and be with you guys. It's been a lot of fun, and I hope you guys have a great rest of your stream.
Yeah, thanks a bunch for coming by. It was great to have you.
Absolutely.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh shit.
So
Awesome. I thought for a really long time he'd be like a cool guest to have on here, but I felt bad that because of the situation, I had to just kind of like throw him on and not really be a good friend and
Oh no,
like
right.
for it. But
Yeah,
you guys took care of him. You guys were good.
yeah, everything was good. Everything was good. He was a very good guest. So I'm in the middle of saying something now, which is that so while Trump was, they want to say like they are. It's like the typical bully maneuver of it's like the 12-year-old bully kid that's like literally like pretending to hit the other kid in the face and then stops like just within inches of the other kid's face, and then the kid flinches. They're like, why are you so scared? Why are you so scared? Why are you so scared? And acting, it's just like this most silly reaction. And like, even if the kid literally does not react at all, like even if you don't even flinch, like if you blink, they'll act like you like freaked out, and it's like I didn't even blink, and they do that to Trump. They act like Trump is freaking out all day on Twitter, blah 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 blah. It's like, well, yeah, he tweets, he definitely does, but not you act like he's this like maniac, like throwing shade at I don't know, Kathy Griffith or something, like all the time. And but that's not actually even true. And they've been so obsessed with Trump and so obsessed with Trump and so obsessed with Trump that they forgot about the fact that like he's actually doing stuff. And then when it came to the point of the Kavanagh hearings, they started trying to pull the same exact shit they do on Trump. Like literally the whatever they've trained themselves to do for the last 3 years since Trump started, like aggressively campaigning, they've been trying to pull the same exact losing strategy on this poor, completely innocent guy. And it just is the most horrible look for them. Like it just shows like just how horrible these people are. Like they're willing to just do it on this other guy. And I find that really, really telling, because it speaks so many volumes about the attackers and not the victims. And so that was the last thing I had to say.
Yeah, it was, and that was perfectly represented today. One in Lindsey Graham's rant, where he basically looks at these people off camera and he's like, I used to be friends with you people, and now the way you're treating this individual is like appalling and disgusting, and I can't even believe it. And then at the same time, there was a video from where they're asking Trump. Trump did a press conference today, right? Well, why did he do a press conference today? Well, because he met with the president of Chile. Did anybody know that? Did anybody know that the president of Chile is currently visiting the White House? Yeah. And they're discussing Chile, and they're
my god, that Lindsey Graham speech though was so freaking awesome. Like just the sky parted and Lindsey Graham's ball sack just descended. Glorious. Like finally.
And not just little bitty green fuzzy ones either. I mean, there were big brass ones.
Yeah, right. But like anybody in politics, like that's what anybody with a spine and any amount of virtue would say. Like that was the only voice of reason, and what it really tells you is just how completely morally bankrupt the world of politics is.
Well, I mean, it's incredible to see that happen on such a public stage so explicitly. It's almost as if Graham was inspired by Trump's own example in just speaking his mind. Thank God, because it's refreshing. And then what's funny is that when they ask Trump about in his press conference today, he has to explicitly sit there and be like, actually, I have no idea what's been going on in the Kavanaugh hearings because I've been meeting with the president of Chile. So I have bigger fish to fry, but I'm sure the Senate can do their fucking jobs. Like
So yeah, what are your that was we talked a lot about that, but you didn't get to Space Pan.
What about like the Kavanagh shit and all this drama? Like all I have to say about it is I'll hear sweet fuck off from anybody who thinks anarcho-capitalism is unrealistic while the entire American government just gets like bukkake choke slammed by the Democrats right now in this fucking circus they're running. Like, oh, okay, yeah, this is unrealistic, and like literally a crying, hysteric, lying whore is like going to bring democracy to its fucking knees and fuck it in the mouth in front of everybody. And I'm just like,
wait, hold on. I think that you're giving her. I think that you're giving her too much. Oh wait, by the way, Jordan, Derek is Space Pan is he came up when you were on before. He wasn't here, and somehow I wanted you guys to talk about something or other that I forget. So yeah, just further. Oh well, the best way to describe him is he's basically exactly like I was 10 years ago. I guess like he's the same person, literally, like just as every bit is like that, except for on less drugs than I was. So but.
You do have to watch Space Pan, though. He does have a tendency to stuff his emotions, so you sometimes have to kind of coax him out.
And mostly it's that he mutes himself and starts typing. But which I also do. Jordan's seen it. But no, the thing about shit, what was I what were we just talking about? Kavanagh. Oh yeah, Spaceman. You give her too much credit for being this lying, hysterical whore, however you put it exactly. She's like lying, crying, hysterical woman.
That's true. She might be just kind of a useful idiot that they've taken advantage of. I've seen that as kind of the prevailing theory.
Well, but more so, she wasn't crying and hysterical. She's not even a good actress. She's a terrible.
Oh my god, she has Britney Spears' voice. She has the same speaking voice as Britney Spears. It's creepy.
Yeah.
She like
Kavanagh actually made me cry.
Yeah, because he was obviously like, oh my god, I'm so looking forward to my video tomorrow using. So I was telling everybody, I'll just give you the brief rundown. Space Pound is that I'm going to be intersplicing clips from this TED Talk about how to spot a liar. And it's this woman who's like an expert who works with like training interrogators for like what interrogators search for and how people lie and how you detect it. And so I'm intersplicing that back and forth with the two testimonies just to show how obvious it is that she's lying and how obvious it is that Kavanagh's telling the truth. So I'm very excited about the video.
Oh my god. No, I have my own kind of like fringe version of that methodology because I used to do mock trial, right? And mock trial is like you have like a fake court case with fake witnesses, and when you play witnesses in this, like it's entirely coached, it's entirely staged, right? Like you're fed all of your lines, you have your affidavit, you rehearse everything, right? In a mock trial, it's like super campy and super fake and super fun, and like that's why I did it so long, because I love like the theater element of it, like everything about it that's not like the law. And like I do the same kind of shit, right? Where I'm watching these and I'm like, this person is acting like a bad mock trial witness, and that's how I can spot liars. Like if they fall specifically within that. And like a really great example of it that Dr. Ford did is like, if she were a mock trial character, you'd be like, okay, so she's sympathetic, but we want to play up her academic credentials, right? We want to like try to like do subtle reminders of like her intelligence. And you'll find times when like she's asked about her own experience and she gives these textbook answers, right? Where, for example, like they asked her, well, how do you remember that? And she's like, oh, well, you know, it's the epinephrine flooding the hippocampus. And it's like, oh, go fuck yourself. Go fuck yourself. Like that's some mock trial bullshit. That's the kind of thing that you would script into your fake answer in order to be like, yeah, because I'm playing the funny doctor character. And like you get away with that shit in mock trial style, because there's this overall understanding that, yeah, it's a competition. Yeah, it's cheesy. Like, yeah, you're trying to add these little flavors and do these things. And if you're doing it for scores and for points, like, you understand it's kind of like a cynical thing. But when you see it in reality, it's so ugly and it's so easy to see like the liars. I mean, and I guess I don't need to get into the Sandy Hook stuff, but it's the same kind of shit with like crisis actors where like you watch them and you're like, this person is like a bad mock trial actors. Like, people who fake accents, it's really easy to tell. And like people who fake cry, it's really easy to tell. And like I'm an expert in like shitty, fake, bad witnesses because of all my mock trial experience.
Wait, Jordan, aren't you kind of into the Sandy Hook conspiracy theory?
Oh yeah. Oh totally. The false
If
flag.
you believe it actually happened, you need Gene Rosin to be real. Like, that's my biggest thing. It's like, you need Gene Rosin to be legit and not an actor. And like that's the silver bullet. Like, no.
Because this is okay. So here's I've always told Derek that there's certain elements of like far right extremism that it's best to keep off the show for the purposes of this show, because he will take it there and then some, and it's just kind of like okay, but and largely just because I can't even follow it, But I know that you are into that like kind of conspiracy theory stuff, and so I just confirming, but I don't really know.
Yeah, well, it's a dark abyss to look into, because when you start to look at, Sandy Hook conspiracy, if it really was a conspiracy, then how did they pull that off, or what was really going on there?
Well, it would have been legal.
What?
When was Sandy Hook? When did it happen?
Sometime while Obama was president.
13, yeah.
December 2012.
Okay, yeah. So he had legalized.
December 2012.
Yeah, so he had legalized the usage of propaganda on the American people, which made it perfectly legal to for the government to pay for hoaxes. So like legally, it actually could have been. Now I don't know anything about the specifics. I'm not propagating that, but legally, the government could have paid for a hoax of that caliber.
Yeah, well, and the more disgusting thing to think about is that the same people that are accused of doing this kind of stuff are also accused of being child pedophiles. Not only are they accused of being child pedophiles, they're accused of eating children. They're accused of extracting adrenaline out of children's brains and using it like a drug. And this is not things that people really want to talk about because it's very disgusting. But that is the whole, when you start to look at it, that's the whole picture. What would drive someone to go to that lengths? And I don't want to go deeper into it because it's very disturbing. And a lot of people, when you start to even consider these things could possibly be true, which I have considered deeply, there's usually some kind of like breakdown that you go through, realizing that, those kinds of disgusting people were at high levels of government.
Huh. Well, okay, so but let's go back to the Kavanagh thing. We were talking about her. Yeah. So one of the things that this woman, who's the expert lie detector, that she says is that people who are trained in detecting lies, interrogators, what they do is they ask a person that is a witness or one of the accused or whatever to tell their whole story, and then they ask them to tell the story in all sorts of different ways, and they do it backwards, and they don't tell you, now tell the story backwards, but they do it sequentially. Like they take, like, this is the final, they start with the end scene, like, and this is how you left. Oh yeah, well, so tell us about that car ride, tell us about and once they have, the thing is that when somebody's telling a fake story, they are really, really good at telling it from beginning to middle to end, and they get used to that rapid flow of not rapid, but that arc, that sort of story timeline. But if they have to remember it in reverse, they get nervous and they start slipping up and start changing the story because they're like actually really, really confused, and it's easy to spot the lies. And so Yeah, I haven't seen enough of the kind of cross examination. I really am basing my I could tell that the woman was lying within the first 30 seconds, but I feel like oh God, I just wish more people would watch things like things about like how do you detect if someone's lying, because it's so blatant. She matched yeah.
So here's the next question I like to ask. Is okay. Let's say she is lying, and this is all a conspiracy. This is a live conspiracy that's happening. What is the motivation for that? Now, one of the prevailing theories in the more the dark or the less popular, the alternative news, is that that there are military tribunals being planned right now to go after treasonous actors within the government who contributed to 9/11, who contributed to Fukushima, who contributed to propagandic hoaxes, who contributed to various other kinds of damaging acts, who are civilians. And the significance is that typically in criminal law, a civilian cannot be tried in a military tribunal. However, our country is in a state of emergency. It's in a national state of emergency, and has been. Trump wrote that executive order, I think, right after he took office. And in a state of emergency, any civilian who's been proven to have aided an enemy combatant can be tried in a military tribunal. Oh, then the next thing I was to say was ISIS, people who, American actors who had contributed to the creation of ISIS. And so these civilians at high levels of government and in corporate positions could be tried in these military tribunals because of the state of emergency. Now, how does that relate to Kavanagh? Well, Kavanagh has gone on record in his judiciary hearings and in other spaces that he fully supports the law as it is, and fully supports that civilians who aid enemy combatants should be tried, and in aiding in treason should be tried under military law, which leads to much easier executions and such. And so the prevailing theory is that they are trying that these dark actors are afraid of Kavanagh because at a Supreme Court level he would support them coming to military justice, and they are trying the best that they can to avoid that fate. Just to put it out there.
Everybody got real quiet.
Yep.
Prince, you okay?
Just want to let everyone know we're at like the 2.5 hour mark, so might want to start.
Yeah, I'm kind of zoning in and out myself.
Yeah, same here.
Looking forward to the Bombert's body language style video though. It'll be like a YouTube crossover kind of.
Does my audio sound alright?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Robots.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I don't know what that was. So I think I just have myself muted.
But yeah, as far as trying civilians in a military tribunal, I'm kind of mixed on that. Getting back to the topic, though, I mean, part of it, yeah, if they do have any kind of involvement with these things, I mean, they are effectively acting as terrorist forces, but at the same time being citizens. I don't know.
Well, okay, a really interesting book. I just finished finally reading really, really dense book with a mammoth amount of footnotes is the David Horowitz's Unholy Alliance, and I'm now currently reading The Feminist Lie finally, which it's kind of meh. It's kind of like just watching MRA and MGTOW YouTube videos for a bunch of pages. Like that's like all that it really is.
It's really, really dense and informative, but one thing that everybody points out is it's like edited really, really poorly. Like he doesn't have a natural like a knack for writing things in good grammar in the first bit.
Yeah, well,
but he knows that. He's very aware. It needs a second version. It's worth getting a second version.
Yeah, well, he needs one with footnotes and references because he doesn't have it so that you can actually look these things up. You don't know where he's getting his information from. So even though, like we have to take him at his word for basically everything. And that sucks because I believe him. Like, I believe he's telling the truth about these people, but like, I would prefer to be able to look up this information he's referring to about Gloria Steinem being in the CIA. And he just sort of says it, like, so
yeah, for that he's referencing the work done by that radical feminist group. I forgot their name though.
The Red Stockings.
Yeah, so maybe that's. But yeah, you're right. That's kind of secondary.
I've heard that before too. I just don't know where I heard it, and that's gonna drive me nuts now.
I've heard it a million times, and there's a bunch of these things that are like that. Like so the book that I finished reading that I keep talking about is Unholy Alliance by David Horowitz, which chronologues the history of the radical left and then the history of the radical Muslim Islamists that kind of started to form in the 1970s who adopted Islamists who adopted the stance that Muslims were these global victims and that like they might have been the first Islamists to ever kind of like play the victim card and market themselves on the fact that like we're oppressed globally. And then they formed alliance with global Marxist regimes and Marxist sympathizers and made alliances with the radical left. And then it was very, very easy for them to make alliances with Muslims in like radical who were often radical in the United States, who were often defended by radical leftist lawyers who decided that it was in the favor of free speech to defend these guys who were funding terrorists. And so there's this whole one of the things that he really goes through, and he does it with like a really, really fine-tooth comb with all sorts of citations to the point where like I couldn't even pretend to recite what it is. But there's all these well-documented instances of various organizations which are they pretend to be respectable organizations that are like working for social change, but they're really just like front organizations for communist groups or Islamic extremists, and they fundraise for terrorists and they do it in the United States, and they send their money directly to Al Qaeda and all this type of thing. And so the war on terror that George Bush was proposing was based around figuring like, hey, like especially with this notion that we have email, it's so easy to communicate across the world at this point, anyone, anytime, any place. You can't just stop the people with the bombs. You have to stop the people with the money that make the bombs and give the orders. And you have to figure out who these people are. And then a lot of the war criminals and the terrorists are the funders that are domestic. And so that might be what this is all about.
That was something that Sam Harris got right like so many years ago. Was just pointing out, religious moderates, yeah, I get it. They're not the same as the religious extremists, but they're still giving cover and legitimacy to the extremists. And like, to me, it's just always struck me as so like ridiculously selfish that somebody would prioritize like, oh, like I want to be a Muslim and have my little veil and blah, blah, blah. And I'm not one of the extremists. And it's like, yeah, but fuck you. You're the one making it easier for them to like go off with their terrorist shit. And you can pick any religion you want. Like the whole point of religious freedoms, you can pick whatever you want. You choose that one. Like, what's wrong with you? I don't get it. I just don't get it.
That's kind of like what Paul Elam's argument against Christina Hoff Sommers sort of sounds like to a certain degree, which is that like she's attached to the word feminist, even though like what she supposedly advocates for has almost 95% nothing to do with feminism, and to the point where it directly contradicts all of the other feminists. And then she pretends that back in her day feminism wasn't about that, and he's like, bullshit, Christina, I remember your day, I'm old too, and it was like that. And
no, everybody's been saying what we need is a debate between Christina Hoff Sommers and Karen Strawn, because that's like their major divergence, is this idea that women used to be oppressed. And Christina Hoff Sommers seems to believe that, which I have no idea how or why she believes that. I have no idea what evidence she would possibly point to, because anything that she's actually done real research on, she's like, oh yeah, and this is how the feminists were full of shit, and this is how the feminists were full of shit. I've never seen her do anything like rigorous as far as like things of the past of how women's used to be like historically oppressed, because that evidence isn't there. It's what it is. It's you never make a legitimate comparison because you just take gynocentric bigotry and then apply it to the actual study. And like Paul Elam's totally right. He's completely right about Christina Hoff Sommers. And I'm kind of at the point where it's like, how is she going on this long and not eventually saying like we've given her so much space to just be like, yeah, screw the whole thing.
Yeah, it's like she's just like a fucking feminist enabler. Like she's just enabling people to like true believers to want to keep holding on and thinking that there was something good in their gender studies class, instead of just telling them, no, actually literally all of it was bad, never mind.
Yeah, like one thing I get into when I see people talk about, oh well, feminism back then was good, it's like, okay, it was 60% shit instead of 99% shit. It still was mostly shit. And even if you want to compare like the original proto and first wave feminism, and people are like, oh well, things are bad for women back then, it's like you're saying your argument is women got the short end of the stick when no one had a stick to argue over.
True.
Yeah,
no, exactly.
That's actually
And
a good way of putting it.
The easiest debunk is when people talk about the equal right to vote. Women never gained the equal right to vote. They immediately gained a special privileged right to vote that nobody else has ever enjoyed. And then men at no point complained, at no point thought, hey, I want the equal right to suffrage. So that's why I say men don't have the right to suffrage. And it's and then there it is. That's over a century. It's just been hanging out there and nobody gives a shit. And like Camille Paglia, she's the other one. Like Christina Hoff Sommers and Camille Paglia are like the two aunts of like supposedly good feminism, like feminism done right, the dissident feminists. And like I'd give a little bit more of a pass to Christina Hoff Sommers, to Camille Paglia, because at least with her I could sort of see like her feminism is like a personal performative art project, and I'm like, okay, like you're weird, you're the weird aunt, and you can just like be weird, like.
I gotta say, I kind of like Palia.
Yeah, she swears that she didn't take LSD in the 60s and 70s, but it's a little hard to believe. A little hard to believe.
Of course not. Of course not.
But yeah, no, Christina Hoff Sommers, it's like it does start to become a little bit, and all that fucking plastic surgery that she must have obviously had. There's something just so phony about it,
and she's a quilt.
I love her as a character, though. She's just like the fairy godmother of anti-feminism, like the based mom. That classic moment with Trigglypuff when she then stop acting like a child. It's just perfect.
Dude, that's what I do like about her. She's got this great ability to get under their skin. I mean, they can just write, for example, Karen Strawn off. Her, it's a lot harder to do because she's stealing their label, even though I'm not one of the reclaimers. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, there's, I mean, I think when it comes to the word, that's what she uses to defend the word. Why do I call myself a feminist? And the final point that she makes in her factual feminist video about why she calls herself a feminist is that she's like, and don't you like the fact that it pisses them off even more than it pisses off, anti-feminists? And like, sure, to a certain degree, I can sort of see that, but like, why don't we just approach this linguistically the way that I like, like when we're so, another thing that's been fed into people our age and younger's head, and maybe a little bit older too, so unanimously, is this notion that like aside from this, I think idea that we all have to pretend to be modest even when we're not, we all have to like pretend to think it's okay to have separate definitions for words. We were talking about that, like we get to redefine words, blah, 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 blah. And one of the other the ways that manifests is that like everybody gets to have their own little personal definition for certain things. And feminism is one of those. And it's disgusting because that's so wrong. Like, there's no reason why every little, every 6-year-old girl gets to have her own feminism. No, that's fucking stupid. No, tell every kid as soon as they start to be able to conceptualize what an ideology and or religion is, start telling them, okay, feminism is an ideology. So let's look at the root of this word. What does it look most like to you? They'd say, well, female, feminine. Yes. And so this is an ideology based around the woman. And like, okay, so what does that mean? Well, I don't know. What would you think an ideology based around the woman is? Like, what would you think that, like, once you think those terms, where do you think that they're going to go with it? Where do you think, like that? And then it's like, well, everybody should be kind. Everybody should respect women. Everybody, the women should be in charge of things. Yes. Oh, yep. That too. Yep. That's, because that's what a little kid would fucking think once they start to think of the word feminism in its purest sense linguistically. And that's how we should start training ourselves to define words. And we should do it just from a strict, like, well, what's within the word itself? What can't you take away? Like, how can you not twist it and necessarily unless it's a word like that has a different word origin than what it looks like, like history actually comes from a Latin root that it's dissimilar. We should go by the linguistic characteristics of the word and not overcomplicate it too much. Does that make sense?
I would just be happy if they stopped saying their truth. She's speaking her truth. I'm like, no, that's her opinion. Baby steps.
Oh, my favorite thing is telling people their experiences don't matter. I love it. I look them in the eyes and I say, your experience means shit. It's an anecdote. Oh my God. It's like crushing an ant. I love it.
Yeah. That's actually in the video tomorrow. I open up with a scene. This video that I found on Twitter. Oh, by the way, I started using OBS to screen capture video recordings. Oh, life will forever be changed on YouTube. I don't know. And this is one of those things where everybody tells you to get OBS. Everybody tells you to get OBS. Everybody tells there's a reason. So yeah, I recorded this footage that I got off of Twitter that is some politician, like he must be a senator or a congressperson or whatever, who's planning on voting Kavanagh in to office. And some like this woman is actual full-on hysteric, like just like everything bad that you can imagine about some like woman who, and she's just like, I was sexually assaulted and your decision, you're gonna go in there and you're gonna tell everybody with your vote, with the vote that you make, that you don't care about me, that you don't care about my feelings, that my experiences don't matter to you. That's what you're gonna be saying. And then she kind of segues into like, and then the man is going to have control over women's bodies, all across the nation. Like she is like segues into like reproductive rights shit, and then they cut it off because you can. It's like wait. Let's stick to the personal is political sexual assault thing. Let's not actually like show why she's really doing it, which is just fucking the abortion and industrial complex, which is why she's really there. To, like what she's really trying to do. It's so funny because she's trying so hard, and then I start the video and I'm like, hey, it's Prince of Queens, and that guy's a politician, so he has PR to deal with, so he has to sit there and pretend to be somewhat sympathetic. But I don't. I want her to know that I don't care. Nobody should care. We don't care what happens. Like your experience, your alleged experience has absolutely no bearing over Kavanagh's confirmation onto the Supreme Court.
Well, not to mention, if Kavanaugh didn't do it to her, it's kind of a moot point.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's so funny that, like, I mean, talk about spoiling people rotten. Like, women in our nation, by circumstance, like feminism did this to them. Like the past 50 years of female entitlements and telling people the personal is political, lived experiences matter, all oppression is connected, all this stuff, that they think that they can pull this crap. And it's like, it's sort of sad that now
the House literally not only harassed me, then went on to one of my business Facebook pages and made a negative review, even though she's never met me before in my life, and then proceeded to personally message me saying that she is that bitch in capital letters. And I had to go on, report her for harassment, report her review for harassment, ban her from my page, and block her from my Facebook. And luckily, like, it was all deleted. But I was like, seriously? That kind of behavior is like, I don't know. I don't even know what to say. I didn't even know who she was. Fuck.
It's appalling.
I've had like so many arguments with people about like gender issues with these women, and like they'll know that they're losing, and then they'll pull it out of their back pocket like it's a fucking, like they're fucking Sailor Moon. They'll be like, well, I was raped, right? And that's like the Sailor Moon transformation where they twirl around and gain their anime magical girl powers, where they're used to like somebody caving and being all sympathetic. And I'm just like, fuck you, bitch, go get raped again. Like, you fucking pulled it on the wrong person. Like, you kidding me? Like,
yeah.
Oh my god, I'm dying about the
Yeah,
Sailor Moon reference.
I was telling my dad about. I think it was one of our like experiences with someone, and my dad's like, yeah. My response to that would be, it's like, yeah, I wouldn't believe anyone would want to sexually assault you unless it was incest.
Oh God.
My dad's mean sometimes if you get him drunk and piss him off.
Yeah, I typically am just like, so when was the last time you were fucked? It's probably been a while, right?
Cobwebs. Excuse me.
I have a video I'm going to send to you, Jordan. Better that you just watch one of my videos and I try to paraphrase it because that's tedious. We don't have long anyway. Where is that video? God damn it. So we are winding down. We're supposed to have about 12 minutes left. So
I'm going to transition back into working. Yeah. It was good to be on here again, and good to say hi to everybody, and good to say hi to the chat. And you guys keep it easy and put the word to the mother.
Yeah. Good to see you again.
Say hi.
Yeah.
So god damn it, where is my stupid videos? Cannot find it. What? For some reason I just can't find it. That's so strange.
Which video is it you're looking for?
It's the one that's called "I Don't Care If You Were Raped."
Oh, let's see if I can find it.
It's called "Why Should I Care If You Were Raped?" That's why. It was just like I had the revelation. So, like, because like you can get in a conversation about any gender issue, like not even anything having to do with sexual assault or anything, and like all of a sudden the woman is like, oh yeah, well, I was raped, what do you think about that, and it's like I'm really the automatic response tends to be, and this is where you lose, is, well, I'm really sorry to hear that, but that doesn't have anything to do. The second you even go that far, you've lost, because they already know that they have you. The second you say, I'm really sorry to hear that. Next, the better answer is to say, I don't believe you. That's better. That is slightly better, but you can never prove that she's lying. She can always go on to be like, well, I don't even know you, blah, 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 blah. And it's like, yeah, but why would you just bring this up randomly where we weren't even talking about that, blah, blah, blah. But it still becomes a stalemate. It just goes back and forth and it devolves. And if it's happening on a mutual friend timeline, you might get yourself unfriended for denying the lived experience of his friend or whatever, that'll happen. So the best response is to say, I don't care. I don't have to care. I don't even know you. And it stops them dead in their tracks. Like, because it's never occurred to them that they cannot force you to care. Like they think that everyone has to care. And they don't. Yeah. So.
I love that.
Okay, I sent it to you.
Well, you gotta admit, there is a certain power in not giving a damn,
The ultimate.
And it's really... What's up?
I was just saying, once I told a woman that if she didn't like the way that I talked, then she didn't have to talk to me.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I boycott gender neutral pronouns. If I and now granted, ever since I made this pact with myself, I have not encountered a gender neutral identified person, period. So I just don't know what would happen if it came up. But if somebody were to tell me that they prefer, even if they said I identify as gender neutral or I'm not non-binary, I would say, so what are your pronouns? And they said they, them. I would next ask, now, is that a preference? Like what is that something where it's a preference? Is it a demand of interacting with you that is it something that you would prefer your friends to do, but you're not going to get mad if strangers don't know? Like, how much do you care about this? Like, how big of a deal is it to you that people refer to you with gender neutral pronouns? And if it's anything short of, I actually don't really care at all. Like, people can, you can call me whatever you want, but that's what I go by. Like, if they say you can call me whatever you want, but I go by they, them pronouns, and I throw that out there to people. Like, if that's what it is, I could be friends with that person. But if they say I'd like my friends to respect, I'd be like, no, we can't be friends. Bye. Because I'm not.
It's never gonna happen.
Yeah. Well, no, and
apologize for it.
And I would maybe even start sort of calling them they, them if they didn't care, simply because I've known so many they, thems that I might start sort of accidentally doing it. But it's they don't deserve even thinking, get it out of their head that they can even ask.
I had a boyfriend, and I was like, look, why have you given me so much power that now, by what I have decided to call you pronoun wise, is creating such a strong reaction in you? It's you've given me so much power over you right now. And it was calling out this weird sexual dominant submissive game that was there, and it was this. I was it was I can't be around this.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, it is weird the way that people have set up this situation where they it's not they first set up a world where they are asking for power over everybody by first making themselves purposefully as fragile as possible, and then saying don't step on me, I'm I'm a piece of wet tissue paper blowing in the wind, like, or something, like, and I might rip at any moment. Therefore, you have to do
like,
everything.
Bitch, why you stuck to my heel?
Yeah. It's like, well, then don't go anywhere near me if it's going to be some big deal if you get torn. And like, it's so funny how offended they get when they find out that people are taking that out. Because I've made numerous videos about, like, I have a video called "Boycott They Them Pronouns," and like they freaked out about it. They were like, oh shit, this guy is like taking a stand. And I'll be perfectly honest. I met this husband and wife who are a little bit older than me, like late 30s, maybe early 40s. And they have teenage age kids that are probably like, I think one is like, 19, maybe one's 20 or so, who are both identifying as non-binary and everything. And they came to my my in-person meetup, and they I don't want to say too much because like no, there's no way their kid is like gonna see it. But they were like, "Oh my god, thank you so much for that boycott they them pronouns video. It meant so much to us."
Wow.
Beautiful.
I still don't understand the whole fury over getting misgendered. I mean, hell, I get misgendered the other day. A lady was talking on the phone to one of her coworkers who presumably was female. She turns back toward me, "Well, ma'am," and then there was this weird moment where she was expecting me to fly off the handle, and I'm like, okay, whatever. I just don't see why people get so bent out of shape about that.
Yeah, I used to have the alibi of, when I lived in San Francisco and I'd be talking to a male to female transgender person, which there's a lot of non-passing male to female transgender people in the San Francisco Bay Area. Like there's a whole slew of them, and when it was somebody who was legitimately nice about it, like not one of these concepts like just trying to get misgendered so that they can be like elitist about it, like, oh, you're cis and you're square, you didn't know that, like, but like someone who's they just can't afford a razor, so you know what I mean? Like, it's like they got breast implants, they haven't been able to afford their hormones for the past 2 months, so they like kind of look like a fucking dude, and they know it, and so you accidentally call them a he, and they're like, oh, I actually identify as she, if that's not a big deal. The alibi, the kind of the way of not weaseling around it, but the way I'd make it into a non-tense situation would be like, "Oh, sorry, girl, I didn't know. I mean, I'm a gay guy. I have a full beard. They keep calling me she anyway. And because gay guys do that in San Francisco all the time. They refer to each other as girl and she and everything. And so I'd be like, oh yeah, like I keep I've had a lifetime of testosterone, and I still call all my boyfriends she sometimes, make them feel a little bit better about it. And it actually is that was true in the situation for me.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so on that note, do you think we should start wrapping it up?
I think that we are ready to end.
Okay.
Yeah, sorry, I was caught in a side conversation in the chat.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I guess good night, chat.
Yeah, it was a lovely episode. So just so everybody knows, you guys should go check out the interview that is on my channel with Chadwick Moore. He said that he would be willing to come grace us with his Tucker Carlson appearing gay conservative spokesperson self in the Gaytriarchy at some point. So look out for that episode. I don't know when it will be, but maybe it will be next week. Maybe it will be 2 weeks. So yeah. That's the preview that I have.
Good night, everyone.